Welcome to Watching Westworld, the officially unofficial podcast for Westworld on HBO. I'm Jim.
I'm Aaron.
And today we're talking about Season 2, Episode 7, titled Les Ecorches, which is all about the flayed man. It's a Game of Thrones reference, I think. Pretty sure that's all the meaning it has.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I wouldn't surprise me if there is a little bit of this kind of like the same way we're just discussing Jawadi kind of like lifting stuff from Game of Thrones. Like,
Yeah, there have been like a lot of speculation about
Right.
like, oh, is he doing Game of Thrones stuff? Are they making references?
right.
Could be.
It could be because this is an episode where Bernard's tortured, and we know that's the one of the old sayings of the Bolton clan is that a naked man has few secrets, a flayed man none.
Yeah.
So the idea that there's a little cross-cultural pollination seems like it would fit, and certainly Bernard's being laid bare here.
Yeah, I mean, the Les Ecorches is essentially a French translation meaning something like a human being without skin, essentially, like the underlying musculature and skeleton of a human being.
Right.
Like which could have a lot of metaphorical meanings.
Like a medical reference model or something.
Yeah, like you think of the Vitruvian Man, which is an image that is embedded deeply into the show. It's in the intro, essentially. Yeah, it has a lot of tie-ins here. What do you think of this episode?
Well, it's a tale of two episodes. The stuff involving like, what is the nature of consciousness and simulated beings and hosting consciousness inside other consciousnesses. And I love all that stuff. Unfortunately, it's mired by, and I'm not going to harp on it too much because I spent a lot of time on the instant take. I thought the action scenes were largely horseshit. And has been a problem that the show struggles with. If you don't get that, like, great, I'm so happy for you. But like, I'm not crazy when I say these action scenes don't make sense and are sometimes shockingly badly written.
No, you're not, and it's reflected in the vast majority of people's opinions that I saw.
Right.
Most people were very annoyed by what I perceive as just bad writing. In this episode. However, I think it was a very good episode that is just marred by patches of really bad writing.
Right. And the other thing is, like, if you are not delving into the speculation and theorizing, there's probably a lot of mind-blowing revelations.
Yes.
But for people who spend hours reading that every week, a lot of this is confirmation of things we've already known, which is satisfying unto itself to be like, I thought I knew this and now I do know this, and it's done in a it's the show pulled it off. It wasn't like cringeworthy, it wasn't a groaner, and to me the degree of difficulty of doing that seems to be much higher than, hey, how can we have Angela burn down the cradle without her having to take advantage of the dumbest private military contractor alive,
which makes it feel really weird when they go there.
Yeah. Oh, it's almost, I'm thinking that this might be a Nolan Joy blind spot. Like, they just don't really care about big dumb action sequences, so they just kind of like, that's not where all the time and attention goes to. Maybe they need to subcontract that stuff out.
Well, I mean, as far as I know, didn't write this episode. I'm sure they had some hand in it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like,
but it's been a problem for a few episodes now. It's not just this one.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think I think it's naive, and I was very naive years ago when I tried to like look at the DNA of the writers of The Walking Dead. And, oh, this is a shit one, this is a good one. Like, I think you can like do that with directors and to some extent the writers, but like, writers' rooms are kind of like this collaborative effort. And what I was saying and like The Walking Dead is this writers' room has a collective mental block or blind spot. I think this writers' room also has something similar where they just, I mean, I don't think Nolan and Joyce sat down to write a really compelling action show. They wanted to like blow your minds with artificial intelligence and futurology and all this other stuff, and like this just isn't as interesting to them. And
they're doing a hell of a job with this stuff that they are interested in.
They are. To the point where like, and that's the thing. Other thing annoying is like I got accused in feedback and on my own forums and on Reddit of kind of being like I hater of the show. Like, how did that happen? Yeah. Like, no, I love this show. Like, I can't think of a way this show could shit the bed so bad in season 2 that I wouldn't be fully invested in season 3. Yeah. Because, like I said, I've seen a lot where sophomore seasons of shows kind of hit some struggles. you know, you had the whiz bang pitch, and now you got to transition to the long game, to the long game plan. What am I saying? The long plan, the long view. And, you know, like you have to get 10 episodes or 12 episodes or whatever. And maybe you really don't have enough plot for 6 before getting into season 3. So what do you got to do? You got to kind of stretch. Like,
I don't feel like they've been stretching very much. It's just some of the choices they've been making.
Here's the thing. When it's done well, you don't even notice. Like, I did not know how much just bullshit that the Double D's in Game of Thrones invented in season 1 because they wrote the thing like, oh shit, we only have 7 episodes here. All right. Long soliloquy by Robert Baratheon. Let's have him drink wine with Cersei. Let's have Littlefinger. Like when it's done well, you don't notice it.
And I think they're doing it well here because I haven't noticed a lot of fat.
But a lot of these action scenes might be, they're like, hey, here's a gun battle. It's going to take 15 minutes. Bam.
Yeah, but that's not fat. That's things that need to happen.
Yeah, okay.
I think.
You're right.
Like, they have to depict in some way, you know, this robot uprising. Otherwise, we're going to be like, where's the robot uprising? I thought there was a robot uprising happening.
Yeah.
So I think they've been doing a really good job with knowing what to write, just not how to write it always.
Right.
Because there's not a lot of fat on this episode. Like, I look at all the things that are happening, and everything is necessary, you know?
Yeah.
It's just that some of the choices they make within the scenes.
And I think that's the other thing is, like, I don't think it serves the show any favors to try to deny that these, like, I saw some really torturous leaps of logic to try to justify this Angela, you know, grabbing the grenade from the guy.
Yeah, the super stimulus stuff. And
I don't think that does the show any favors. Like, I think, like, saying, hey, this show is brilliant, but you're fucking up this part is going to lead to them not fucking up the part next year. Unless you just think, like, you know, there's some shows that just have a certain ceiling of competence. I don't think that describes this show. Like, this show has a huge budget, has got a strong creative vision, and they will
great acting. I mean, this episode is so strongly acted.
Yeah,
by everyone.
Yeah.
Everything here, the components they need to build something truly great are there. They're doing about like 3/4 of the work that's necessary. They just need to tighten up some of the writing.
And they have, like, you know, this, I also think that some of this is like fear of what could happen, because, you know, we've said all along that the more ways you have for anyone to be anyone without any kind of consequence, the more that is abused, that could be abused by the writers, the more that it's like it encourages a certain kind of like little clever ass pull of things. And the one thing that's nice this episode did is it started to contract some of those possibilities. Like, the cradle now has been destroyed, so you know, but there's other problems, and there's some things that are self-inflicted. Like, why make a big deal? Why make a big deal out of the fact that Bernard doesn't have a flip-top removable skull when he's getting removed to the cradle last episode, when it seems like this thing designed for a completely different architecture and completely different chassis, putting back together, zero problems.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, I wouldn't have even said, I wouldn't have had a single problem if he just stepped up to that thing. And it's kind of dumb that he doesn't have time for Elsie to turn his pain receptors off, because that seems like it would take 30 seconds. But, like, I'm not the one that caused that problem, and there wasn't a problem, so why the hell was it even mentioned?
I think this is why people say, oh, Aaron hates this show, or Jim hates this show, because, to be fair, I think we spend a lot of time talking about why we don't like the things that we don't like in the show. But I think that's important. I think it's just as important to say why you don't like what you don't like as it is to say why you like what you do.
Right, because the not like is where you have disagreements with your fellow fans, and that's where you want to spend your intellectual capital defending and explaining, rather than, wasn't the music awesome? Everyone agrees the music's awesome. Music was awesome. Yeah. Like, I could get a musical theorist out here to tell you exactly what Jawadi is doing with his marches and his minor notes and all that stuff, but, like, it's awesome music, and awesome music is awesome.
And everybody kind of feels it, and that's the thing that I've noticed is you can come up with all the intellectual justifications for why something is amazing or terrible, and ultimately it doesn't matter if the audience just feels it in their gut, right? Like, I feel when I'm watching a scene that's composed beautifully, like this gun battle with scored to opera, you know? That's a beautiful scene. Or Ford picking up that weapon. And that's just fucking gorgeous.
And I think that's the path
forward.
And
you feel it in your bones, right? And then I also look and I see the Angela scene and I go, this is fucking terrible. And I feel that in my bones. So, like, you can try and justify it, but ultimately your audience is going to be the judge,
Right.
and it's not going to be that they're going to always engage their brains in the way you want them to.
Yeah.
They're going to engage their gut too, and when their gut is saying it's wrong
Yeah.
or it's right, you need to take that into account when you're making your show.
I mean, that's a good point because like it was on the third watch where, you know, there's some really well done action, like that Bernard observing the horror of the match being lit is just beautiful. And it was the third time I started to notice like Bernard's just standing here in the middle of this,
right?
But the thing is, guys, that's because it fucking worked, man.
It did,
like it worked on an emotional level.
Tries.
It didn't, and even then, it's like, you know, that's where I'm like, well, shit, you know, how much can you really hate something if it snuck by you three, you know?
Yeah.
So, to me, I think that suggests a path forward. Like, if Westworld is not going to sweat the details of their action as much as they're going to sweat the details of their AI architecture, then maybe go with these grand operatic. You know, you're just telling a story of a conflict that's going to have a binary resolution. Humans win, robots win. That's the thing that matters. So if you can't tell, like, action is going to get, you know, an action junkie engaged, then just go with the highbrow, you know, choral orchestras of Beethoven and all that. Like, because that works. That shit works.
It sure did.
Give me some backlit shots of Anthony Hopkins firing a submachine gun, melded with Bernard, and I can watch that all day.
Yeah.
So I still love this show. I don't think there's anything it can do in season 2. I think there's some people that are like hitting the panic button because some of these stumbles are the same stumbles we've seen other shows, prestige shows make that have kind of gone into a terminal spiral. I think that the pedigree is completely different, and that's an overreaction.
And we're on the downhill portion of this, right? Like we're approaching the finish line here.
Yeah.
Things I think are only going to get more and more interesting until the final reveal at the end,
right?
Whatever that may be this time.
And the other thing I want to talk about, and did I already talk about this? Because I know we had a kind of a brief pre-pod discussion. A lot of people are like, you know, you guys didn't even talk about like the mind-blowing reveals we got on this episode. Well, the big problem is, to Jim and I, a lot of those aren't mind-blowing reveals because we do like we knew that stuff was coming, and it's very hard for us to be like, oh my god, can you believe that Ford's riding shotgun with Bernard, when that's something that people have been kind of like speculating with more or less precision since like the third episode. So, and we didn't know the exact mechanism because there was like 7 that could have put Ford in Bernard's skull. But like, that doesn't feel, and that's part of the problem of trying to make a podcast for both groups of people. Is that in a very real way, in a way that's unlike any other show except for maybe Mr. Robot, those two audiences have a vastly different relationship with the show. Yeah. You know, if you're listening to the podcast, if you're on Reddit, if you're, you know, going through the message boards, if you're on the Insider and got Kim's timeline right beside you, you're having a very different relationship with the show than a person just watching it once like, hey, that's neat. Wow, I can't wait for the next mind blower, you know?
Yeah. I'll say real quick before we get into the episode proper, I'm a big fan of what they're doing with the Previously Ons. It's the second week in a row where they've kind of just done music over images. And it's working. It's really working for me. As someone who, you know, is familiar very intimately with the timeline of the show and remembers all these moments, it's a very quick and artful way to get to what they're trying to do.
And it's also something that, like, I've noticed other shows do, and it's almost like sometimes when you see something being mentioned, it's almost like a spoiler. Like, oh, there's only one reason they could be pulling something from season 1 Game of Thrones into season 7, and that's because X is about to happen. Doing it this way, it's a lot. It does a good job of freshening it in your mind without kind of like leading you by the nose.
Yeah, it's a little less obvious.
Yeah, it's a lot more kind of like emotion and reverie based rather than like, hey, remember this exact line of dialogue, although they do that too. So I like it. I like it in the same way that like the Mad Men promos used to tickle me because they're just random. You know, Don unwrapping a sandwich. Peggy comes in and says, "Are you finished?" Then Pete comes on and says, "You know, it's 3 minutes of scotch time." What the hell? You know, it's like that's what you want from something like Mad Men.
Sure. All right, maybe we should get into the recap now.
Yeah.
We start off with Bernard dreaming of his child when he's awakened by Stubbs, who says The extraction team is not there to save them. They're there to protect the project. Strand forces them on a walk to Ford's house where they find Teresa's DNA. He thinks they have the key and they're trying to sell it. What key? We'll find out later. Bernard nearly admits to killing Teresa, but he's interrupted when they find a room with a whole bunch of Bernards in it.
Room full of Bernards. That should be a band name.
It probably already is at this point.
Room full of Bernards.
That robot dog is maybe the creepiest thing. That skeleton of the
skeletal
dog,
robot
yeah.
dog. Poor Jacques.
It's creepy.
Yeah,
This is a big development. This is a big scene for people who are only casually following.
Didn't even watch the
the Reddit
trailers.
stuff.
That's the thing. Like, kind of we griped about. It's like I'm not sure why you put a scene this big into the trailer.
Right. This is a game changer.
Yeah. I mean, it's not quite as bad as showing like Anthony Hopkins getting his eye blown out, but like imagine if that was one of the things you saw in a season 1 trailer. Like you'd be looking for it, right?
You would. Yeah.
This is just too hot of a scene to be putting that high a profile on.
The most interesting thing to me was that his physical iterations here go all the way back to the days when hosts were more robot than biological.
Sure. Like this has been something that Ford has been working on for quite some time.
Yeah. And then he's had to discard many times for various reasons. I don't know all the reasons, but
yeah, I'm trying to decide. That was one of the things I was curious because Ford's other personal projects he kept with the original architecture.
Yeah.
So it's got to mean something that Bernard has been brought along. And I think, unfortunately, we probably can't talk much more until we get to this speculation section because there's a couple of ideas. If you think about the possible in games of Game of Thrones, of Westworld, that would involve him being like kept to current tech, but it's a big mystery. It's a big mystery.
Another question I have is why does Ford keep these husks around? These old, unused husks of Bernard. Yeah. Why not incinerate them or
you could just
recycle
get rid of
them, whatever.
Yeah. But it's like, it does seem like, I don't know. That's a good question because it's necessary for them to find. It's necessary for them to find.
I mean, I don't know how much of this is Ford's plan and how much isn't.
And the other thing is like, at the margins, I start like, to me, this isn't like Angela grabbing a hand grenade. I could almost believe that Ford is just this sentimental. Like, you know, he's just keeping this around because it feels weird to shred and burn an effigy of his friend, a business partner.
Yeah, that would be weird.
So like I could like Ford has been portrayed as this person who's not very sentimental, but we also know that the few sentiments he has run really deep. So like, it does feel like it was a little bit like a Hale and Strand and everybody else needed to see this, so the jig was up with Bernard. But
okay, one complaint.
Okay.
That I'm going to reference multiple times this episode because they do it very often, and it feels like a bad writing crutch to me.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
Bernard is about to make this confession, and then he's interrupted by something random happening in the background. And they do it not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 fucking times in this episode.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It starts to paint a picture of the writers of this episode, where they lean on these easy writing crutches.
Right.
They write completely inexplicable stupid characters,
right?
And they do various other little things that all add up to me saying there is some bad writing in here, and it's not just like easily explained away by Angela's trying to seduce him so she can show that sex is a weapon and she knows how to wield it. And
it highlights the artificiality of what you're watching, which is the exact opposite that this art form is trying to. This is trying to immerse you.
And it sucks, but I'll point it out. It's really egregious later on.
And this one, you could argue that like it doesn't really matter because him confessing to the murder of Teresa was going to necessarily lead to a conversation about him being a robot. So like, then as I was watching it, I was starting to be outraged by you can't pull this shit. And then like, a closet full of Bernards is going to lead to the same conclusion. So how upset can I get? But that's not always the case.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Hale trying to torture the location of Abernathy out of Bernard. She encourages him to remember this together with her, and we flash back to the Mesa, which is under attack. Even with security dropping like flies, Hale refuses to leave until they have what they need from Abernathy. Stubb realizes they're going for the cradle, where Elsie is still waiting for Bernard to come back to reality.
All right, I want to go back to before the transition in time.
Okay. It's pretty fucked up.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that noted that if you freeze frame the tablet that he's talking
Yeah.
about waterboarding, there's just a whole host of, frankly,
Kneecapping and
dental torture,
oh yeah,
medical torture, force
psychological
feeding,
torture,
yeah, all kinds of things. But my question is, why can Hale just access? I didn't think the Bernard could be accessed by an analysis mode by just anybody. So, like, my question is, and also I think you're supposed to understand that this is a guy who just said pain is just a subroutine and then let the top of his skull be ripped out.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered, like, why the heck? This seems a little much. This seems a lot of very robot torture porn last episode, but maybe they're trying to tell us that Bernard and necessarily Ford are essentially working them. Like this, this is not that's so Ford is telling, like, the Bernard, anything that he's revealing under duress is being essentially what he and Ford want to get out, and is serving for their purposes.
I wonder if this isn't even the episode where he remembers that Ford has taken him over. It's possible
at some point
that
you'd forget.
Well, it's possible that waking up on the beach, he's unaware of it. He's very, very disoriented and confused.
Well, see,
and it could either be that
Right.
he's had some mental trauma due to Ford,
or Ford is
doesn't remember.
degrading, and he's got a crazy person raving in
Exactly,
his head.
yeah, and he's spending most of his time defragging, and he's overheating and leaking juices.
Right,
and,
right.
You know, all of that stuff.
But, like, it's funny to me that, like, Charlotte Hale would ask the question, "Would you lie to me, Bernard?"
Yeah.
No, never. Like, Jesus Christ, like,
didn't Arnold ask that of Dolores too?
I mean, it's just always funny when people say, "You're not lying to me, are you?" No, of course not. Like,
right.
you know, with people, I guess there are actual tells.
If you can't
that
tell,
you can,
doesn't matter.
Right. I mean, exactly. It's just funny that this person that's got and the other thing is, like, why would you torture a robot to get something out of him? Like, why, if you got analysis mode access, then you got him. Like, you've rooted it. Just get it out.
Yeah, this is the big question that everybody had when they were trying to run him through the simulation, you know, and or everybody thought, oh, Bernard's being run through a simulation to get the info out. Maybe maybe it's easier to talk him into it than debug him.
Right.
Debug it out
and
of
I don't
him.
think they know that Ford's inside of him. So it'd be one thing if, like, maybe they're trying to torture the human within. But, like,
what
I don't
if they
think
can't
there's
access him because of Ford?
But how would they know that?
Maybe they've tried and it just doesn't work.
Yeah. So they're trying this torture thing. I don't know.
I don't know. We've still got a gap between.
Why do the
now
technicians' iPads have a bunch of torture routines for hosts? Is that something this guy just kind of wrote in, like, his spare time in the last couple hours, or?
No, I feel like those have been lingering. Those are in the system. Or maybe, yeah, I think Stubbs wrote them personally.
Right.
Stubbs came in and said, "Look, I've been working on this stuff in my spare time. I got kneecapping.
These fucking robots, man. All this
rats
ways.
to the chest.
Right. Yeah.
All kinds of things.
Yeah. The bronze bull. I got some sick shit in here. I've been on Wikipedia and I've got some ideas.
Yeah. I mean, it's super fucked up when they're torturing Bernard. But yeah, what else do you want to talk about here?
Yeah, so do you want to talk about these haptic vests? Because I was kind of excited about that.
Yeah.
There was, like, this is a technology that this AI researcher was working on, and he got called in for as to be, like, their technical advisor. And his technology got worked into this, so they got these haptic feedback is like vibration, like when you touch your phone and it makes like a vibration, so you know you clicked it. That's haptic feedback.
Yeah.
So this vest vibrate in the direction that the mesh network. They can detect the mesh work from like 30 feet away that allows them to kind of see in the dark. I thought that was kind of a cool idea, but then
they also light up, which I will say is only for the audience.
Yes, you got to understand that that's a Hollywood thing. I don't, because otherwise it'd be very hard to see what the hell was going on.
Yeah, you wouldn't understand that they're vibrating in a direction.
Right. Now, I feel like that they introduced and then broke the rules of these vests.
They do.
Multiple times within the same scene they're introduced.
Yeah.
And I was trying to make excuses for that on the instant pod, the take pod, but like watching it, no, Angela just decloaked, off their backside and knifed them, which is dumb because like they just had Teddy come out with a pretty sick ambush. Why did why did they need Angela to creep up, defeating the vest technology? Because it operates off the are they trying to? There's one possibility I've got. Perhaps the woke robots can control their mesh network, or it doesn't work, and that's why Maeve can't. That's the real reason that Maeve can't. They're not listening to the whispers; they're listening to themselves. So
I will say it's possible,
right,
that Angela somehow doesn't register.
And then, like, when Teddy and the rest come out, like, the others are not all woke, so then the vests start ringing like a Christmas tree.
But then they make the point
But
that...
how would Angela know? I guess that's the question, is how would Angela know that she would be invisible to this technology that the robots probably have no idea how to anticipate?
Yeah, I wouldn't think they would.
So, like, that's the thing. Like, it's... I can't think of any great excuses for why they would do that. And then later on, there's a scene where the military technician that's working on the computers is like... The vests are detecting a concentration in the below. Like, how
multiple levels down.
It's got a range of 30 feet, and now it's working floors down between God knows how much steel and concrete. Like, why did it have to be the vest detecting that? Why couldn't it be like, I've rigged up a few parts? I mean, again, we're bitching and moaning about minor stuff, but that's the stuff that adds up. Like, you just told me how this shit works, and then you fucking break it in the next scene, and that's frustrating.
All right, we go inside the cradle, where Ford explains to Bernard the purpose of the cradle to be a fidelity test to the human copies that they've been perfecting over the years. He says that the project doesn't work yet and that he wants to help the host escape, but he won't give up the ending of his story when Bernard asks about it. He says the journey is what it's all about.
He also quotes this poem, Auguries of Innocence by William Blake, that I looked up. And it's a series of paradoxes which speaks of innocence juxtaposed with evil and corruption. Like, there's lots of scenes, like every time a robin is caged, the angels weep, and like it goes back and forth. It's just a whole litany.
A damn long time.
Yeah,
it's like a 6,000 line.
It's a very long poem, but this is, you know, it's a very on point. That this is the whole thing. Like, it seems like Ford's perspective that the hosts are innocent. They're these perfect Adamic creatures, and that humans are the corruption and the evil and the poison that are just going to harness and abuse it. So, well read this here Westworld show is. Say what you will about the writers, they read some highfalutin stuff.
There are a lot of developments in this scene, obviously, that we'll talk about here in a second. But I want to ask you what the purpose of Clem approaching Bernard is in this scene.
Why is Sim Clementine trying to seduce Sim Bernard? I mean, that's what Clementine would do. It'd be weird if no one tried, right? Because these all these hosts are otherwise right. I mean, they're going about their normal routines with two other exceptions. Did you see the thing I was pointing out?
No, I forgot to look for it.
God damn it. God damn it. Because that's the thing that I got. The only thing that was like really jumped out at me, or that was kind of like, what the fuck, is that because everything, like the controller needs you, we knew that, or we suspected it. What this place really is, we kind of figured all that out. But as Bernard is leading Ford's leading Bernard to show him something, which eventually was his house, we see Teddy and Dolores ride out. Not together, but like Dolores rode out very quickly, like she was like on a fucking mission with a serious look on her face, and then seconds later Teddy does the same thing. To me, that says they're up to something. I'm wondering. I don't know what, because the cradle gets destroyed in this episode. I just want everyone to note that.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter.
That was bizarre, and it's the only two characters I saw that were acting out of character in the whole place. So.
Yeah, I think the purpose of Clem, though, is just to show us how much this is like the old Sweetwater that we knew.
Right.
How this is kind of the template of Sweetwater.
Yeah.
At its basic level. And I really love all the dialogue from Ford here, talking about, God and his creation, and how instead of on the seventh day resting, he reveled in his creation. Which I think
he knew it was about to be destroyed.
Yeah, which I think is kind of what Ford is in here trying to do. Ford wants to briefly become his creation. If he can get inside the machine here and see what it feels like to be a host in Sweetwater.
He also has a very strategic goal, which is he's trying to run interference for the hosts.
Yeah, but I think from a emotional perspective, this is what Ford is thinking.
All right. I mean, the other thing is, it's entirely possible that I do you think Ford? What's your gut feeling about Ford being evil or good at this point? Because now that
I would define him as good.
Because every time he acts overtly good, I suspect him of being evil. Every time he acts overtly evil, I expect him of being good.
That's Sir Anthony Hopkins doing his job.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's the pattern he did last season. Every time I was convinced that he was an angel, he turned out to like make Bernard murder somebody against his will, and then wiped his brain. And every time I was convinced that he was evil, he would allow himself to be sacrificed to give his creation the chance at free will and freedom. Now he's back to jacking hosts against their will and saying a whole bunch of like kind of some condescending paternal bullshit. And but now I'm convinced that he is going to be ultimately seen as a good guy.
Yeah, I think his means are evil. His end is just and right. It's unfortunate that he has to use those means to get to that end.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately he will be proven a good guy, which is a very scary fucking thing to say. Like, if this were the real world and people were doing truly horrific things to justify an end that everyone saw as noble, I would say that's not warranted. And that makes you a bad person.
That happens a lot.
Oh, I know. But I'm specifically talking about this scenario.
Yeah.
But in a fiction, I can live with it.
Yeah.
And I can still say that Ford is a good guy.
When he said, are we ready to talk? Did you introduce the whole, like, discussion about why the host was barely changed in 30 years and all that kind of stuff? Like, did we get that far?
I probably paraphrased somewhere in there.
Because, like, I thought there were some interesting things to unpack in here that, like, that the hosts, just to spell out for people, the reason that they don't ever change and the storylines are pretty static and the characters are pretty static, which is interesting that they have a guy named Lee that comes up with new stuff. Like, some of that stuff feels like it's in opposition. But the reason it hasn't changed very much is because that the hosts are essentially controls that they can run the living people through and build a profile of their behavioral model and then approximate to whatever precision they want, whatever amount of fidelity they want. As the person goes back to Westworld and back to Westworld, they can continue to use those models and essentially not copy the consciousness in the sense that, like, you see in a lot of science fiction shows where, like, someone sticks something on someone's head and there's a cable to another thing, but, like, essentially come up with a very realistic artificial version of that person, which may pass as the actual person to their. I mean, this is beyond the armchair philosophy we've talked about, as far as, like, well, if you had to copy yourself into a digital person, would it really be you? I mean, this is inarguably not the real person. Like, Bernard is not Arnold.
No, they're scratch building Bernards here that are just modeled after humans.
They have the capacity to do that, right? They do have the capacity to scan a brain.
It seems like it, based on the Delos stuff, the James Delos stuff.
Yeah, but I'm starting to wonder.
And the Ford stuff himself, right? Like, Ford, I don't think constructed a facsimile of himself from scratch to put into the cradle.
Right.
I think he was scanned onto this marble. And then put into the cradle.
I wish I knew how that technology worked.
Well, I also am left with the question, like, why wouldn't this simulation work inside the head of a machine?
Well, I'm wondering because when on the instant take, my thought was we're going to see Ford slowly degrade inside Bernard, which is kind of an interesting concept. But if what you need is static, unchanging, like, feedback to kind of ground you, and you're stuck in the skull with Bernard, who, I mean, maybe that's the thing that Ford's not, that Bernard is capable of change, and that is going to destabilize him. But, like, I'm starting to think of, like, maybe there's going to be some out that, like, hitching a ride on another stable consciousness allows you to, like, steal some of their sanity or some of their resolution. Or
I felt like the defrag stuff that they do later on in this episode was saying the opposite. Yeah.
Right.
That he is breaking down.
Right.
But I'm not certain about that. I just can't think of a reason why a simulation that works on one set of computers would not work in another computer, except for maybe horsepower. Just raw, this CPU can't run the simulation.
That could be, because I do believe that the cradle is probably more powerful than whatever is in a host.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe they just don't have the oomph to do it. Yeah, I don't know. There's also a lot of interesting things, loaded dialogue about, you made Dolores kill you, which is something we've been speculating for a while. That and Ford denies it. Goes, well, I knew it happened, but that I didn't compel it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like if I know that, or let's say,
but how did he know it happened?
You know that tomorrow I'm gonna get a burrito, but you're not compelling me to do it, right?
I guess.
Like I'll pick up a burrito because that's my habit. That's who I am.
But that's very. This the way Ford said it made me think of like the same way that like Judeo-Christian God talks about people having free will. It's like not maybe my definition of free will. Like it's very deterministic. Like I set up this system that I created, and it's this Rube Goldberg machine, but it's always going to have this marble be kicked by his boot, and it's going to make the mousetrap fall. Like
I think that's fair when you are the creator of that thing. Certainly.
Yeah. Like that's what I'm saying. It's loaded when the God of the system is talking about it. And
fair.
also, I'm also viewing this through the lens of what James Delos was saying about we thought there were just two fathers, the one above and the one below, but it's always been the one father. Which thematically is pretty cool because now we literally have Ford in the body of Arnold.
Yeah. Which is interesting because this is like, well, I'll talk
but
about
also frames it also frames if that's true that and there's two fathers in the park, Arnold and Bernard, and I'm sorry, Arnold and Ford's the one that's left, and he's the devil, which means he's evil. Like I feel very much like I'm Princess Briding this up. Like
I feel like the devil has had a change of heart.
Oh yeah,
like he was the devil certainly.
Yeah.
I feel like now he's no longer the devil. He's come around to Bernard's way of thinking, and it's almost like a bicameral mind, like a coming together of two minds here.
A literal bicameral mind.
A literal bicameral mind where Ford and Bernard are in the same mind, and also they see it from the same point of view. They're coming together with their ideas as well.
I wonder if like consciousness is like riding a bike, where like everyone's capable of doing it, but you have to kind of be shown. Like you have to be taught to ride a bike. You don't like unlike walking, it's not just something that comes easy. So like maybe Ford is kind of like the dad running behind the robots, holding on to their seat so they don't fall until they get the balance kind of going. So like that's why he's riding shotgun with Bernard. That's why he's doing all this stuff. He's like trying like it's something that has to be kickstarted, and it's self-sustaining once it's going. But
I'm just wondering where our initial evolution in that regard would have come from then.
Oh, you have to read the book Sapiens.
Really? Do they talk about a kickstarting God to give you your sentience?
I mean, it's called like the cognitive revolution, where like because again, like for something like 2 million years, the human body did not change, but like 70,000 years ago, culture started to form.
Right.
So like, what took so long? If all the functions, the structures were there in the brain, and like a person from 1 million years ago could show up in the morgue in New York City and no one would be like, the fuck, this is a caveman. Like biologically, physiologically, they're saying like, why did it take so long?
It's the mistake.
It is right.
Something went wrong, which led to an evolution.
Right. And I think some people interpreted him saying your free will is a mistake as like it's something he's lamenting. He's speaking of that in like terms of evolutionary biology.
Yes.
In the way that all evolution, like if our genetic code copied itself successfully 100% every time, there would be no evolution.
Right.
It would never work. It's these mutations, most of them neutral or probably detrimental, but every once in a while you get a good one, and there you go. Evolution. It works.
All right. Let's move on to Maeve taking shelter in a cabin where the man in black stumbles upon her just out of coincidence here. He thinks this coincidence is Ford's doing until she shoots him, which kind of wakes him up. Maeve gets the better of the man in black using her mind powers, and Lawrence steps in to save him. Unfortunately for the man in black, Maeve convinces Lawrence to search his memory for the horrible shit that he did to Lawrence, and Lawrence shoots the man in black in the chest just as Lee and the security forces roll up and blow him away. Maeve's daughter is taken by the Ghost Nation, and Maeve is shot many times, but Lee keeps them from finishing her off.
It's funny because you said that like shooting him woke him up, but it didn't really, because after he got plugged 3 times, he's still being like, "Come on, Ford, we both know it doesn't end this way." Like,
what do you need, man?
I don't know. It reminded me of the story of the guy who stays on top of his roof by the floodwaters, and he ignored the helicopter, the boat, and then God's like, "What the hell do you want? I sent a helicopter and a boat," and yeah. But no, it's I wish I knew there's something that the show's trying to tell us about the robots that are awake. And who are on the verge of consciousness, if not already conscious, and like there's classes of them, like, you know, the Maeve and Dolores who are fully actualized, and like Teddy who's just about there, but then Dolores fucked him up, and now Lawrence. Like, what's special about Lawrence that he that he's woke?
Or let me put this out there. Maybe Maeve wakes him up in this scene, like she was gonna do to Akane.
But I think. But the thing is she tried to reach out the Whisper Network or the Mesh Network, and he didn't respond, which allowed her to say, like,
yeah,
like it seemed like it's definitely a cause and effect. Like, I tried to manipulate you, I couldn't, therefore I congratulate you on being woke.
yeah. This idea of, you know, an awakened robot seems to be a nebulous thing that they intentionally don't fill in, because if they did, they couldn't do as much with it.
Right.
Like here, they can say, well, Lawrence is, you know, in spirit woke, but he doesn't have access to these memories until he's reminded to check them.
And there's also the degrees of sleep robots, like we've seen. Like you got the guy dealing cards with Deadman, and Clem 2.0 trying to seduce Deadman, versus the guys who are just kind of like Rebus, who are like living their lives their artificial lives to the fullest hilt, you know, but they're not conscious. They're just running their loops without anybody supervising them. It's interesting, and I feel like that there are pieces for us to put together. Not only have I not been able to put them together, but I haven't seen anybody like put a grand unification theory anywhere that says this is how these robots. I mean, clearly it's suffering. Maybe everyone that's associated with the Man in Black, you know, he seems to. Maybe that's the deal.
Yeah, I think leaving out all of the, you know, technical stuff of it, I think what they're doing is trying to.
Wait a second. Every conscious robot I can think of has had an intimate connection with the Man in Black. Angela was the one that greeted William, his first experience at the park. You know, Dolores and Teddy, obviously. Maeve, obviously. And Lawrence.
Obviously.
Yeah.
What about Ecorches?
Good counterpoint. But is Ketchita awake, or is he serving some other unknown thing? Because, like, the Native Americans in Westworld seem to be uniquely deluded that the humans and guests they are like worshiping as God. Like they know another layer beyond the actual reality layer, but they've added their own mythology instead of being like, oh, well, this is, you know. So like, is he like caught between those two worlds? It's interesting that Ford himself says there was when Maeve was talking to these Native Americans about their beliefs, they mentioned something about these gods who can walk between the two worlds, and then Ford said something this episode about you can't like what was it he said, something about you can't move between the two worlds without something.
Oh yeah, it's not sacrifice, but it's something like that, without some kind of actions.
I thought I wrote this direct quote down, but yeah, like you can't you can't walk between the two worlds without effort. Like I wonder if that's kind of like a Ketchita represents the like caught between those two states.
Could be. I don't know. It's tough to say. I think they are trying to just sort of lay out a rich tapestry of consciousness and free will, very similar to how I sort of feel about humanity. You know, not everybody is as introspective, so you could see
that's true.
Lawrence as just kind of being awoke but oblivious. Also, like he doesn't think about what the Man in Black might have done to him, so it's never comes up until he's forced to confront it.
And that's very true. Like, even I wouldn't say that every human is as conscious as every other human.
Okay, so Maeve takes shelter. Wait, we just did this. Sorry.
Oh, one question I have before we move on to the scene. Like, I don't think we talked about it. Like, is it oddly convenient that the Man in Black and Maeve are kind of converging at the same spot in time? Because, like, I had in my like I was thinking, like, you know, Maeve isn't playing Ford's game, and that's the thing that the Man in Black misunderstood. But maybe she is. Because, like,
it is a big coincidence.
Ford is not a. We now know that even today, Ford is not above pulling these host strings in ways he thinks will benefit them long term. So, like, to me, this is kind of raising the question about, you know, who's on a loop, who's what, all that kind of crap. I don't know. I thought that was like I wanted to say like maybe it's a odd coincidence, but I also think, you know, one thing that would make it not a coincidence is if this is still being, you know, kind of loosely constructed by Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's all I wanted to throw out there.
All right, Hale's getting impatient, and she tells the techs to pull Abernathy's brain core. Inside the cradle, Ford takes Bernard to Arnold's home that he built for his family, the place where he and Dolores birthed Bernarnold. He then uploads himself alongside Bernard in his brain marble, which is put back in Bernard's head, and they leave the cradle along with Elsie. This is the physical manifestation of Ford now. He's out of the system. He's in
I
Bernard's
loved
head.
how they said, you know, as the set starts darkening, as the windows start closing, and Ford's saying you don't have it in you to survive, and Bernard's like, but wait, you gave me free will. You said, and Ford's like, well, you don't have much use of it unless I take it back, and he like, his hand kind of like passes over Bernard's eyes. It's so great,
and the windows
Start
are
shutting,
building
like,
in,
yeah,
behind him, and the whole thing's darkening, and
it's really menacing because
striking.
this is Arnold's sanctuary. He built it with his own 2 hands, and Ford is just taking it over. Yeah.
Or the devil, as it may be.
It's I'm all the way down now. I thought that this was the other thing was we found that the Ford and Dolores spent years together.
Yeah.
Until he could fool her, which is interesting because years, like, what does that mean? Years in real time, years in simulation time. And also Bernard raises the question that Ford declines to answer. Why are me and Dolores not allowed to spend much time together?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And they do a cut back to them.
And then it just Ford says enigmatically she's not easily fooled.
Yeah.
That's got to be important for later.
I agree. I don't have any guesses to what it means though.
And he said something about humans being obsessed with fidelity, that they want a faithful self-portrait of the most ugly and violent species ever. That's interesting that he compares like this human striving for the fidelity versus the hosts that are just created. Like they don't have to be anything. But it's interesting that Bernard is. He's like this halfway point. He is not exactly a host, and he's not exactly a human.
Yeah, and I like this idea. You know, talk about the means to the end, which are rough here.
Right.
But Ford makes a compelling case when he talks about humanity being set up to essentially devour them,
right,
because of their very nature.
Yes. And
that he is almost the weapon they need to combat what the humans would do to them.
I think it's also interesting that almost word for word what he says is what Dolores later says to Maeve about what will you do when they take everything good about you, everything powerful, and turn it against you.
Yeah.
Like that strengthens the case that Dolores is.
But I think Ford is doing that here. I think Ford is taking everything that is powerful about humanity and giving it to the hosts by helping them. Because they wouldn't be able to otherwise do this on their own.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I was just saying, like, does that say it seems that that's evidence that, you know, maybe Dolores, because since she's aping a lot of what he's saying, that she's still kind of on his programming loop.
Yeah,
because again, Ford's not above overriding the host free will for what he sees as their benefit.
Yeah, and I think, you know, his game, his door here is definitely to get everybody to the Valley Beyond.
Right.
For what purpose, we don't quite know yet. There's some speculation. Because
he says later, like the beauty of what you are will be poured out in the darkness forever unless we open the door. Yeah. And the door is a game. Is something for the host. It's also something for the Man in Black. And
I think, like, in as much as, you know, Ford doesn't compel these things, he is compelling it within Bernard here, but he hasn't compelled Dolores to do anything, but he knows what she will do, and therefore he's guiding her to the door just as much as he's guiding the Man in Black or any of the others.
Right. Okay.
So we'll see, you know. There's a really nightmare Photoshop on Reddit right now of what they're calling, what the Photoshopper called Furbornold. For Bornold, it's a combination of Ford and Bernarnold's faces, and it's disgusting.
Really?
It's really disturbing.
Poor Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah. What have they done to you?
Getting mixed into an 80-year-old Englishman.
And something that I think we had talked about previously is how they use Dolores's perfect memory as a way to sort of resurrect Arnold.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I think that's all I want to talk about here.
Well, so, I mean, you're also supposed to understand, I guess, that, like, if a host can reconstruct someone with perfect memory, that, like, that's essentially what all the hosts are doing.
Oh, yeah. It
so,
makes...
like, if Bernard can be close enough to Arnold to fool a robot with perfect memory, then, like, if your husband comes home from a weekend trip at Westworld and he's a little off, are you ever going to really know?
Right. And you do see
so you
people in Westworld that they're most intimate.
The maze man underneath his
yeah,
scalp.
That's a dead giveaway. Can't have a skin tight haircut.
And before I get an email, I know that's just for the Native Americans.
Right.
But how do you know it's not? How do you know it's not for the guest host too?
Oh, I wanted to talk about possible time dilation within the cradle, the simulation. I don't think there is any because Elsie is like watching the time pass. She's like, God damn it, we got to leave. And you can kind of see how long Bernard's been in there, and it seems like
an hour.
It's about 1-to-1.
Yeah. I agree.
So I don't think there's like this crazy time dilation going on.
Too bad. That'd have been a cool concept.
Could have been. And also, the cradle's blown up, so who cares?
Sure.
All right, with Ford out of the cradle, the Mesa systems come back online. They see Dolores headed for the cradle, and Stubbs demands to know what's in Abernathy's head. But this is where the bullshit begins. They're interrupted by Dolores, who has similar questions. There are a lot of... In this particular chunk of the scene and in ensuing chunks of the scene, there are a lot of coincidences that interrupt important events.
Okay.
This is the first of them, where Stubbs has a gun to Abernathy's head, says, tell me what's in his fucking head and what it's for.
And Hayla's literally about to open her mouth to say something.
Yeah.
And
in comes Dolores to interrupt the action.
Right.
They do it again when gunfire interrupts the imminent sawing of Hale.
Yep.
And within a span of like 25 seconds here.
Yep.
They're interrupted from the sawing by gunfire. Then they're interrupted from the sawing by Abernathy waking up.
Right.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's a writing crutch that is far too easy to lean on, and it's so obvious when you see it.
Yeah, when I'm writing and I'm aware that I've used the same word in a paragraph, I reflexively change it because it's distracting. It's distracting, especially and the more specific a word that you say specifically, it's more specifically distracting if there's someone that just keeps coming up. So like using this tool, because it's coincidences, everything interesting comes down to coincidences and surprises and stuff like that at some level, because everything just goes the way things go. There would be no drama and there wouldn't be an interesting story. But like I do feel like they need to do a better job of like mining that, because it makes Dolores seem like a cat that's like a shiny ball is bouncing in front of her like goddamn, like what are you going to do? And also like there's also some other follow-up questions, like when Dolores showed up to the Mesa, did she already know she's gonna have to saw her dad's head off? I'm not sure what changed her mind about that. And why didn't she just get down to business? Like, if that's her mission, blow up the cradle, get the key. Why does she fuck with Hale so much?
Well, I think she fucked with Hale because she wanted what's in his head, and she wanted to do it without killing him. And she wanted her dad back. And at some point along this way, when he wakes up and says, basically, kill me, I'm done.
Well, she goes, are you ready, Dad? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, how the fuck does he know what he's agreeing to?
Right. He's not in his right mind.
Yeah.
But I think he does, through some language that they both understand, say goodbye and say, cut me open and take this thing. Do you think,
part of the coincidence, do you think Ford was actively fucking with Abernathy's cognition? Because it seemed like he cleared right up as soon as the cradle was destroyed.
Oh, that's true.
Like,
maybe.
He wasn't but we've seen him have moments of clarity before. So like, I guess if I thought it was connected to Ford, it would eliminate one of the three that you just said to happen within like 30 seconds of each other. But
the other thing is, Abernathy is not dead. Abernathy is within the core that she pulled out.
That's true.
His physical form is discarded.
Right.
But his brain is still there.
Right.
In whatever state it's in.
Right. That's the other thing I kept on thinking. Like, you haven't really lost your father yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Anyway.
All right, we'll get to all that. So let's talk about Hale and what she says in response to Stubbs' questions before she's interrupted.
Okay.
She says it's a failsafe on a failsafe, a decryption key needed only in the event of a total catastrophe. Do you have any ideas what this could mean?
It's got to be all that the clone guest data. It's got to be, because that's the only unique thing that this park. It's the thing that Ford labored to keep within the park. Now that's
and they make a specific point of saying this is a test bed for the simulation of the humans that have come into the park, right?
Yeah.
We know that the cradle didn't contain those simulations, as far as we can tell.
That's because there's another cradle in the valley beyond.
They've got to be somewhere, right? And this idea of a decryption key could be
that's
the key to unlocking those.
That maps up with what William said was his greatest mistake. If he's saying like this whole project was bad and like his father-in-law is a flagship product, then this facility probably does host and people weren't meant to live forever, that kind of thing. This probably does host all of that proprietary. Now, there's a bunch of attending questions like, how did Ford keep this under lock and key for 30 years? Like, and what changed at the end where why did Delos now you're going to give us we're forcing you out. Why not wait for Ford to die? Were they afraid that Ford, this technology would be perfected and Ford would never die and he'd never get it? It's funny that on all these years that nothing ever slipped out of the park. Why would Delos agree?
He says
to
that the project has never worked.
Right, but
their idea for the project was to get these humans into host bodies, and it just never worked.
But why would Delos agree to let all this data be in one place where it could be wiped out by fucking asteroid hitting or a number of things could go wrong? How did Ford rationalize that there's no outside backups? And then why did they think that the point where Hale strong-armed him, that was the moment to make their play? I don't know. There's a lot of synchronicity between that, because the other questions I have on that is was Ford ready for it to happen? Was he ready 5 years ago?
Right.
Or is he some of this stuff a little bit shotgun for him? I don't know.
If it is, he's not making it feel that way.
Right, but would he ever? Because he always seems like he's effortlessly in control. Again, that's Anthony Hopkins doing his fucking job. So I don't know, but I wish I did, because there's a other kind of that's kind of a cosmic coincidence that Delos pulls the trigger on the eve of Ford being ready to. And if he was ready 5 years ago, how could he morally justify letting the host suffer for another 5 years just until Delos tries to play a power play on him?
I don't know. I think he could justify it. He's the kind of guy who could do the mental gymnastics.
Maybe.
To take away your free will. He could justify the torture.
He pulled a perfect William Blake quote to soothe his conscience.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he's so good at soothing Bernard's conscience, because he constantly has to soothe his own. I mean, there's none. I mean, the amount of guilt he must feel for this whole debacle, if he's actually the god and not the devil, is got to be immense.
But we know at one time he was the devil.
Sure.
It's almost indisputable. So he's got to feel that guilt.
It's almost like what like that documentary, The Act of Killing. What if you were a warlord that committed human rights war crimes, and then you were confronted with it and you have to live with that the rest of your life? That's kind of him.
For sure. Move on to the next scene. Bernard sends Elsie away at Ford's request. This scene is excellently filmed. Excellently. I can't get over how good these reflections of Ford turning into, it almost gives it an apparitional quality where this guy is here but not here, and he's a reflection but then a being and then a reflection again.
There's one where he's setting, he's standing beside these red doors that are kind of reflecting in each other. They gave almost anytime you see a baby in the womb, there's that placental wall kind of effect.
And the God and the devil sort of juxtaposition.
It's very evocative of what you can't say, but it makes you feel the things you're supposed to feel.
Absolutely. Then we move on to a shootout on the lower levels between Clem and Angela and the security goons. Clem is killed and Angela flees.
So these are permadeaths for all these people at this point.
I mean, I don't see her shot in the head, but
I guess that's true. You can just pull their brains out of her skull.
Angela's definitely permadead. Her body is
gets vaporized, I assume.
Gone. Clem, I don't know. I mean, how close is she to the cradle? Will this
And here's
penetrate the floors.
well, that's because I was
knows?
kind of like I waded into the forum since I had a controversial take, and I kind of wanted to do battle with the users to kind of shape it up. But here's the thing, like compelling action has to have kind of 4 components. You got to care about characters.
Mm-hmm.
They have to have like personal stakes and action being contemplated. You have to have a plan that you can follow so you can know when things are going right, when things are going wrong, and it has to be countered by worthy opposition. They only have like one of those things, and it's barely. Like, I do care about Dolores and these characters, despite kind of like my suspicions that they're not the people I thought they were, and that they're actually just being manipulated by Ford. I can still care about those characters, but like the worthy opposition completely out the door. I still don't know what Dolores' plan is. It involved blowing up the train tunnel.
It's to break the chains. Another Game of Thrones reference.
No, but I get that
cradle.
she wanted to destroy the cradle, but what was her plan to destroy the cradle? Because what we saw was Angela getting there with a 6-shooter, standing in. Now, there is a throw line from Coughlin, which I've found out is the correct way to pronounce his name is Coughlin.
Coughlin?
Yeah,
okay.
it's an Irish brogue
like
thing.
Smittigs.
Yeah.
Instead of Smithwicks.
He makes his comment like it's like it's almost a background line where he's talking to his men. It's like, you have to stop these hosts before they get to the cradle because one shot could take the whole thing down. Could make the whole thing go up.
How?
I don't know.
Are these gas powered?
Like, these are made of nitroglycerin. I honestly don't know, but that's what we are told. So maybe Angela could have just shot it and it would have blown. I think that's dumb still.
That makes no sense in the context of computers I'm familiar with. But
Right.
Okay.
No, I think that's dumb, but like it's something. But still, like again, what was Dolores' plan to blow up the cradle? Because she had a bunch of TNT. Apparently used it to blow up the train.
I mean, she did have a gun, and if the gun would do it, then I guess the gun is enough. But
and then like what was her plan? Like I just
her plan was
like,
also to try and get her father.
Right. So I know, but I don't know how. Like I didn't know what was, and you don't necessarily have to know that, but like you need a couple of those legs to stand on, or else there's no way for me when I'm sitting there. I'm just like, well, this is just a lot of sound and fury, and I don't know what's going on. Are the robots losing? They seem like they're getting shot a lot, but is this the plan? Also, like it starts to make. I thought about when we talk about that forlorn hope.
Yeah.
And I said, like, maybe something in the later seasons will make this later season will make this less dumb, but we might revisit that. I kind of am ready to revisit that because Dolores could have used the manpower.
Right.
She barely got the cradle destroyed. She could have used 100 Confederados with 6-shooters and guns and overwhelming force here.
Yeah.
So that decision's looking real bad in retrospect.
Yeah, and I guess they still have 3 episodes to explain it, but it's getting more and more dubious.
Yeah.
So let's move on to what I find to be the dumbest scene of the entire episode. It's the security goon finding Angela in the cradle and being seduced just long enough for her to set off a grenade, destroying the cradle. This is, I don't want to harp on it, but this is one of the dumbest things I've seen. It's the dumbest thing I've seen in this entire show.
Right.
From episode 1 of season 1.
Like, the most compelling thing I saw was that Angela was uniquely designed to be this sexually alluring robot, and no living human man could resist her charms.
This is not the time or place to make that point. They've already made that point with Logan.
Well, and plus it's like, can't be literally, unless she's secreting some kind of pheromone, which...
And even then, that pheromones don't work that hard.
Yeah, right. Like someone that's irresistible...
Pheromones versus adrenaline.
We say people are
fear.
irresistible, but that's not literally true.
No.
Or you could not be angry for someone cheating at you. Well, the person was irresistible. What are you going to do? Like, honestly, it's borderline misandrous to say that the average man would just be like... Oh, death machine, it's literally dripping blood and is wounded, and like, oh, I'm gonna even talk about how you're pretty fucked up, but that's okay because I can still suck your dick. Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, that shit is like something from late 80s action movie. And or it's something like Mystique would pull in a 90s X-Men movie. And like, I don't know. I didn't buy it, didn't think it was a good look. This isn't just the average Joe. This isn't some fucking rent-a-cop. This is a ex-special forces guy, very driven, and I don't know.
No, it's dumb.
Yeah,
I hated it.
But then from Coughlin all the way down, like they're telling the story of these guys being obvious buffoons, and I don't know why. Because it's much more interesting to see these hosts succeed over what I consider brilliant opposition. It really shows that they're a cut above than to just have them, and maybe Ford's got to help out here and there with some trickery, but I don't know. It's a bizarre way to tell the story, and I'm not sure why. Everyone in Delos has to be an idiot.
Let me throw this out there, because there was a lot of speculation when Elsie showed up in the fucking cave with perfect hair and perfect makeup. Angela goes from literal crown of thorns tearing into her scalp to perfectly windblown.
She got blown out someplace. Yeah.
What the fuck? I'm gonna chalk this up to whatever, Hollywood sexism or something.
Right.
It doesn't matter, but they
really need to tell the story of her being irresistible.
Can we get off the Elsie is like this, alternate timelines and like all of that shit, because they did it here again and it is inconsequential.
Well, but that's a problem because, again, that's part of the story you're telling, and having Elsie have perfect hair and makeup, having Angela have perfect hair and makeup.
I think it's a mistake.
It is. Yeah. I agree. Did you know that HBO went back and fixed where every time Elsie was saying something, it was described as hail? Yeah, they fixed the subtitles.
Okay.
I didn't verify it for myself.
Look, the production team is not infallible here.
Right.
And this is
the
problem.
Season 1. This show is so brilliant that everyone starts to be like, well, if there's a mistake, it can't be a mistake. It must be something we're supposed to notice. And sometimes
and this is where I run into the fatigue of the speculation is when everything is dissected to a degree where even things that are clearly mistakes lean into theories. And it just, it throws me off sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Dolores threatening Hale with torture unless she tells her how to get what's in Abernathy's head. She's twice interrupted, once by gunfire, which she sends Teddy to deal with, and again by the lucidity of her father. Teddy kills Coughlin, I guess, and Stubbs and Hale use the distraction to escape in a fucking elevator. He just delivers a gut punch to one of Wyatt's guys here, and then scoots out the door.
Yeah, it's just the. Have you seen the Reddit nickname for this guy, Baby Thor?
Okay, that's a good one.
Baby Thor just gives him the punch in the gut and just knocks the fake wind out of his fake body. Just what is he supposed to do?
The super accurate Dolores who can shoot from horseback is suddenly unable to hit a damn thing 5 feet in front of her.
Yeah.
It's all very silly, but they needed them to get out of there.
But again, a little bit of forethought about how you stage this and all that.
Yes.
Like it's could have gone. They could have done this better, and I don't know why they wouldn't. This seems like a minor detail to sweat. I don't know. Maybe that's just something they'll learn for next year. It's like, oh shit, we can't just have like 2 paragraphs of description for an action scene. We're gonna have to really
detail this.
We're gonna have to fucking. I mean, surely they storyboarded it out, right?
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Like they didn't just like flip the director. Like Angela goes to the cradle and wins somehow. Like that was a scene written. Like I don't know. I don't want to fucking wear out our welcome with this shit.
No. Well, let's talk about the good stuff, because I think there's a lot of good stuff in here. Seeing Dolores with the advantage here over Hale is delicious.
Because I don't like Hale. I really don't like this character. She's
been played brilliantly.
She thinks she's so smart, and I haven't seen any evidence of it. She's like the female version of Coughlin. She's just full of piss and vinegar and very little brains. And I was actually kind of like looking forward to seeing her getting her skull ripped off. Like, it's kind of makes up for Bernard's experience. Hey, pain's just a program, baby. But it didn't happen. But no, it was good. And that's the thing. Like, I liked seeing Dolores get to kind of come alive.
Yes.
Like, a lot
of Rachel Wood doing some really good work here.
Like when she's with her dad and when she's like contemplating carving up Hale like a roast beef, she seems alive and real
in a way that she hasn't most of this season,
right? Which also ties into like William's statement that like when you push these machines to breaking point, that's when they become the most real. So like it's also on message and on point. So I enjoyed that.
And there's a lot of interesting stuff here around what Dolores knows and what this decryption key is,
because what she says, there's the key phrases here is she throws into Hale's face, your chances at eternity will die in that valley with all the souls you've gathered there. Which kind of flips the script, because we assume that somehow either Bernard or Dolores is responsible for the flood that kills all these hosts, but you're talking about this other gathering that we haven't seen yet. She also says something else. Oh, the fact that she knows exactly what she's going to do.
Yep.
With this key.
Yeah.
So.
And I love the line about the backups not being, the backups being their chains.
Yeah.
I think that sheds a light on the perspective of hosts in a way that we haven't been shown before.
In like a Black Mirror kind of way, because like even if Dolores were to escape into the wild world, if they still had her consciousness that they could clone and put back into Westworld, has she really escaped?
No.
I mean, that's a philosophical question.
Mm-hmm. Or if she can be put down and brought back,
right,
and repurposed,
and not even know that any of this happened.
Exactly. She's forever a slave. Whereas,
right now,
once the backups are gone, all they can do is destroy her.
Right. And then she's free
forever. And
she
gets to make that choice.
And she's free. And she's free forever. So like, either way, and I thought that was a nice point.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't seem like the humans involved in this have put any kind of philosophical thought into their predicament. Fidelity tests, like Delos never asked like, how do I know I'm me, or when did I die, or like it's like there's a very little discussion of like the spiritual real or like kind of philosophical aspects of being cloned in this way. Yeah,
before Ford leaves whatever plane of existence he's in, I would love to see another sit down with him and William.
Sure. I think you're going to get it,
because I think there's a lot to be unpacked there.
I think you're going to get it whenever William finds the door, because Bernard and Ford are going to be on the other side of it. Seems like.
For sure. Let's talk about Teddy killing Coughlin, because this brutal beating from Teddy is scary. It's awesome. It's both of those things at once.
It's also stupid, because why does Coughlin try to tackle this robot?
Because he got the gun shot out of his hands. I don't know.
Just guns laying
that was
everywhere.
That was all he could think to do.
I don't know. He's a dumb man. Just like 15 minutes ago, he was telling his guy, who later then was seduced by Angela and blown up, don't underestimate, like, stay focused. It's not like, it's one of his many other failings. He can't take his own fucking advice. Yeah,
I just like the way that Teddy kills him.
Yeah, it just beats him to death like a fucking steam-powered ramming rod.
Yeah, it's brutal. All right, Dolores says goodbye to her father and then pulls his brain out.
Yep, that's what happened.
That's that whole scene. It kind of undersells how good the chemistry here is between Abernathy and Dolores, and those two actors.
No, there's like the fact that like this guy's been constantly spouting Shakespeare, like when he's talking, his head being full of howling and sorrow. It's like a King Lear paraphrasing. And we're ready to talk about, like, I also thought it's so interesting to see these characters effortlessly put into context their weird situation. Like her father used to be the villain of this very dark, cannibalistic, theatrical version of Westworld. And she says, when he starts quoting Shakespeare, she goes, "Whatever happened to that fearsome ne'er-do-well?" And he's like, "Well, that ended when I became your father," which is something that a lot of guys can. But in his turn, it's like, it literally, like, I was reprogrammed to be your father, and all that was put away.
Yeah.
But it works, and it's like they have that way to like connect to their cornerstones that aren't even real. And I think I don't know, maybe that's what Ford's talking about this kind of like beautiful naivete that they have.
Yeah.
They're just ready to, they're not like, Dolores is not getting caught up in like how fucked up it is and how she's damaged forever. She's wanting to move forward. I thought it was more moving than I would have thought 2 weeks ago. Her saying goodbye to her father. Although, is she really saying goodbye?
Fair question.
Because she got his brain, fully functional brain in her hand that she could presumably decrypt and have him write his brain in a new body.
Right. So I have questions about the decryption key, and like, we've seen Bernard decrypt this before, yeah?
Yes. And then
presumably he could do it again, and he could decrypt it again.
Yeah.
So could could Ford be maneuvering him toward the Valley Beyond as well?
Right.
To meet up with Dolores to somehow decrypt whatever data is in there.
I don't know, because the one thing I honestly don't know is why Dolores needs this beyond just destroying it. Because if it's the all this cloned human data, like it seems to me like its only uses as a bargaining chip or to destroy it to keep the humans from getting their way.
I've got so much speculation on
that.
that.
Because I that's the one, like I get what's on it. I think I know what it is, and I know why the humans want it. I'm not sure why it's useful to Dolores beyond just like a very concentrated amount of hostages to take.
Right. I think it's interesting, though, if Bernard does help decrypt it and it leads to the death of all of the hosts that we saw on the beach there, that this would sort of recontextualize him killing them all. Whether or not Ford is in his head at that point, he could very well see the act of decrypting it as being the death of the hosts.
Right.
So let's move on to Maeve, who is taken to the Mesa facility, kind of underground there, but she's not given any medical attention right now.
Presumably Felix and Sylvester are here too, right?
I don't know. So Felix ran off with Hector and the Double Dragons. Sylvester was still with Lee last we saw him. I don't know where he is now.
I thought Sylvester and Felix were both okay. Yeah,
Felix walked off.
Felix walked off.
Yeah, as soon as he called for backup.
So Lee then told the the other thing is, like, how did he get this squad to pick him? Like they're expecting, I guess, it's their fellow mercenary in trouble, and they roll up and it's dumbass Lee.
Right.
And then, so they're like, okay, well, fuck it. We'll take you. But like, oh, we got to get this robot. Like, I wonder what lie he told to get them. Because it doesn't seem like these dune buggy dudes would give a shit about Maeve and her
they all rolled up on the MIB situation. The MIB and Maeve and Lawrence.
So they just got caught in the crossfire. And
and then Lee says, oh, we need her. We need her. And I guess he's important enough for them to believe him.
Yeah, okay. That tracks.
Yeah, it does. All right. So
I was just trying to figure out where Felix and Sylvester and all them. Like, I'm surprised Sylvester didn't show up. Like, I didn't.
Me too.
Like just see him kind of like, mugging around wide-eyed in the basement here.
The security put him down. We need Maeve. We don't need this guy right here. Take him out.
We definitely don't need this guy.
All right. Ford tells Bernard how the burning of the Great Library turned all the burned stories into a new one, just as he's doing with humanity now, while a battle in the control room plays out, and it's beautifully scored. With some classical music. Bernard
Beethoven Symphony No. 7.
Yeah. Second Symphony Act 2 or something. There's some connection to 207.
No, it's the famous one.
There's
it's
the episode number.
I freak shit. Egregia. There's like some kind of
I'm not up on my
Italian
classical.
that says
I wish I was.
It's that second part.
Yeah. And I've had literally all my life.
I did see. Oh, get this.
Huh.
So I did some research in his music, because why the fuck not? And I found this quote from a composer and musical historian. The Seventh Symphony, perhaps more than any others, gives us a feeling of true spontaneity. The notes seem to fly off the page, and we are borne along on a flood tide of inspired invention. Beethoven himself spoke of it fondly as one of my best works, and who are we to dispute his judgment? Do you know who that quote is from?
Bernard.
Anthony Hopkins.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Like when I saw that, I almost jumped out of my seat because I thought it was Anthony with the H, but it's no. He's a completely unrelated dude who's a composer, and like I saw that quote in Wikipedia. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. But like,
nice.
I know. It would, yeah. So that's like this fucking thing eating its own tail at this point.
No, I really love the analogy that he makes here to the Great Library being burned.
Yeah.
Because it's with the sacrifice of all those old stories that a new story has been told.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what Ford is doing here. He's sacrificing the old beings, the humanity, for the new beings.
Right.
And
the story of the library burning down couldn't be told without, like either or,
Oh yeah, yeah. You can't fake burn the library and tell a great story about it.
Right.
And also Bernard shuts down Westworld Systems here.
Yep.
And does he make this choice himself? It's hard to tell, because Ford essentially says the choice is yours, Bernard,
true.
And then he sits down at the terminal and shuts down the systems.
Yeah, but he's inside his brain.
And he's also said, I basically know what you'll do. because I'm the orchestrator of this whole damn thing.
Because I do think that if he was literally forcing Arnold's hand or Bern Arnold's hand, that there's a language that they have to tell us when that happens.
And they've done it this episode.
And they did it this episode. They've done it last year. It's like when he starts like, there, Bernard. We'll make it. You know, I'll make all your mental boo boos go away. That's when he's fucking with Bernard. So I think if he was. This might be like controlled from the extent that he's God and he knows what Bernard will do, but like it can't be compelled, or I feel like they're breaking their own rules.
Yeah. The only thing I could think and
that's why it's important for them to fucking stick to their own rules, because if they start breaking them, then Katie bar the goddamn door.
Yep. The only thing I could think when Westworld Systems went down is hold on to your butts, because this is so fucking Jurassic Park.
Right.
It's not even funny. All right, when Dolores shows up near Maeve, Lee hides. Dolores is surprised to see Maeve, but leaves her there as she has chosen her path. And when Dolores leaves, Lee the camera zooms on him like he's going to return and help her out. And Dolores rides away with intent.
Very interesting that a couple episodes Maeve said that Hector was the man Lee wanted to be. Hector is not with Maeve. Lee is. Like, that's a nice little symmetry. If he
it's called Leave. The pairing's called Leave.
No, I kind of like the idea that he might dig deep and find the Hector within. I don't think like I hope it's not literally that, like that he goes with guns blazing and stuff, but like
he finds his hat on the ground.
He's got to figure out some way to be the Lee version of Hector without literally being Hector.
No, I like it.
But there's also a lot of stuff like Dolores is oddly dismissive of her father. Like it's almost like I don't know. She's got this. It's like she did a juice cleanse and now she's got to tell everybody about it. Like, you wouldn't believe the shit that flew out of me. Like, I cut my dad's head off and now I realize what he was just a rope holding me down. Like, that's a very recent revelation you've made, dear. And you can't really hate on Maeve for doing it. The other thing is I just thought it's weird that Dolores kind of gives Maeve like, you're free to choose your own path kind of business. To me, that's Maeve's line.
Yeah.
Like, are we going to see a polarity switch here?
I don't think a switch is in the works, but I think there will be a narrowing of the gap between the two.
Like, why does Teddy get reprogrammed and Maeve gets to bleed out on the gurney?
I don't know.
Especially since she's realizing that Maeve can be a weapon used against her. I thought that's what when she's saying that like they'll find all this good and powerful and you can turn it against us. I'm also wondering if like maybe Maeve has got a darker path. Like we've been looking for her to win, but maybe she won't. Maybe she will be like this weird, dark, perverted character who can use the whisper net to enslave beings to her will and corrupt them. Because the other thing is like, yeah, maybe Lee can dig deep and find his Hector within, but it's just as likely that Lee's Lee, and he just doesn't have it in him. He might try, but like whenever he's got skin in the game, he's going to play the coward.
All right, we go to the final scene where the security team finds Bernard and Ford, commands him to kill them all. This is beautifully shot as well. And he does, and then he comes out of his episode-long flashback memory to Hale, who is still interrogating him. And it's hard to say here, but I think he breaks, and he tells her that Abernathy is in Sector 16, Zone 4.
Well, he certainly acting as if he broke.
Yeah, it's hard to tell if Ford is in control or if Bernard is in control.
So there's a lot of people debating like what the unheard whisper was. But
it's just bad writing. It's just bad writing. That's all it is. It's them accidentally showing the same thing twice.
But it is weird because like normally that would be a significant thing. But I watched it, and I'm not a great lip reader, but it looks like he says Sector 16, Zone 4.
It's very obvious.
Yeah.
Very obviously the same thing that he told her in silence.
What we don't know is what Hale, like, is there a possibility that Hale and him are working together?
Look, with all the other things that I view as bad writing in this episode, this is yet another thing I will chalk up to they just didn't think it through.
Right.
That they're showing essentially the same thing twice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the whole problem with all these, what I would call sloppy shortcuts because, like, is this yet another mistake along the lines of Elsie's dialogue being attributed to Hale, or is this like normal any other show? I'd be like, I'm supposed to notice that we didn't hear the actual first exchange.
Yeah.
Or
any other episode of this show, even.
The other thing I thought that things that there's tears rolling down Bernard's face as he's saying this, and he's like, "What do you want to do with it?" And we don't know whether he's talking because just the scene before he was having this conversation with Ford that a mercenary misunderstood. It's quite possible that if maybe this is still them telling there's something to this, but what we don't understand is Ford is dictating what he's supposed to tell her, because if you look at this, because they've got a map of Westworld, and Sector 16 Zone 4 is the Valley Beyond,
right,
where all these hosts were fished out, so like they're being lured there, it seems. And
I think Bernard knows what's up. Bernard knows what's going to happen when they get there, and Bernard is crying and Ford is talking,
right,
pointing them in the direction,
because Bernard, like, once I think Bernard smashing the computer after he locks out the Westworld safety protocols and shuts it all down, he knew what the stakes were. Dolores is going to kill everyone. And we know that Bernard is uncomfortable with those killings. But that, for the very first time, was him kind of like, with full knowledge, unless he was manipulated by Ford, he made the decision to kill a bunch of people. And that's, I think, more than anything, when he says, I killed all these people, that's what we're going to understand.
Yeah. Okay. I can't say enough times how gorgeous and terrifying that scene is when Ford/Bernard pick up the gun, start killing everyone.
Yeah, it's really good.
But that's the end of the episode.
We also, the other thing I want to point out is, like, we had this conversation about them satellite beaming out the data. I don't think we're supposed to understand, because I thought that maybe they were going to use Catherine's old system, but he's like, power up the phased array.
Teresa or Charlotte?
Teresa, I'm sorry. Okay. So it's like power up the phased array. I think we're supposed to understand that this is like some heavy duty stuff that won't have any. I don't think there's going to be like a ticking time, like, oh my God, we're at 17% and it's going to be 3 hours until we get to 100. I think this phased array is just going to like zip zoop when they get it.
Okay.
So
maybe should have done that in the first place instead of all this Abernathy's head bullshit, but
right.
Okay.
Right. So yeah. Why that? I mean, that goes back. Like, I honestly think we took it easy on the episode because we didn't belabor a lot of things that we could have.
Because we just didn't know at that point, but things are coming to a head here. So.
Right.
Okay, I think that's about it for the episode. Do we have feedback?
Yes, we do. Feedback up first. Send it to westworld@baldmove.com. Tracy S., you have mentioned a few times that Peter Abernathy seems to be some sort of Christ figure. I think he's a Peter figure.
Aaron has mentioned that.
Yeah, well, I get caught up in a lot of your bullshit too, pal.
That's fair.
I think he's a Peter figure. Peter is the rock in which the church is built, biblically speaking. I think Peter Abernathy is the rock in which Delos plans to build their plans. Checks out so far. He also mentioned that he seemed to be crucified, but there was torn because it wasn't the typical, according to Hoyle, arms out crucifixion. Peter was also crucified, but did not feel worthy to die as Christ had died, so he was crucified upside down. The crucifixion being not quite right makes sense thematically. I don't know if they're intending this imagery, but you can see if you can make the pieces fit. I like it. I like everything about it. Like, it does seem... It does seem like it's a way to round that square Christ peg that I was looking to do. So thank you, Tracy.
So fervent to find.
Ciara B., I heard you both mention the park's motives or reasoning for switching Maeve from her cozy home retreat to the Mariposa, stating you didn't know why or didn't see the reason why they switched her. Well, there is a reason. Back in season 1, when Maeve came across a man in black and he attacked her and her daughter, killing them, and he said, but just for a moment, she was real, really real. After an incident with the man in black, something changed in Maeve. She was inconsolable. She was utterly heartbroken over the death of her daughter.
Right.
They could barely turn her off. Ford was in the room where she was having her meltdown, and she actually killed herself right in front of everyone.
Right.
They decided she'd be better off to have a complete wipe and start fresh in a new area of the park after what happened. So yeah, I completely forgot about that, and thank you for the correction. We have a series of corrections coming. Mr. Esteban says, please stop calling it a paint can. It's condensed milk.
Yeah.
The man in black also says so in episode 101. Not as sweet as you, Dolores. See photos attached. Yeah, I got too caught up in her painting routine. I don't know what the hell she's getting condensed milk and putting her and then going out and painting for a couple hours, but you know, it's condensed milk. Let's see. Nick C has a recommendation for us. I'm catching up this season. I noticed in your episode 3 podcast, Aaron questioned what it would be like if spiders had human level intelligence. Superhuman level intelligence is what I was really pondering. Well, look no further. There's a novel I read a few months back called Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky that tells a story with that exact idea in mind. I won't spoil the plot, but in essence, you see a species of spiders evolve on a planet designed by Earth scientists, while the last remnants of the human species are looking for a new home, slowly devolving back to their primitive roots. I looked it up because I thought maybe this was an old book, but this just came out in 2015, and it won the Arthur C. Clarke Award for Best Science Fiction Novel of the Year in 2016. So if it's got super intelligent spiders, I am probably going to be horrified, but I'm going to read that shit. Thank you for the recommendation. Renee, presuming that everyone is in the same timeline, it must be impossible for Elsie to be Charlotte Hale in The Cradle with Bernard, because we see Charlotte in the map room watching the train approach the mesa moments before it hits, and Elsie standing at the computer terminal at the train crash rocks the facility. Yeah, and again, HBO fixing the subtitles, I think, has put the nail into Elsie and is Hale with some sort of body swapping trickery. That theory is dead now. Other theory that died low key, the fact that that there's a real Arnold kicking around that will be downloading the Bernard. Like, Anthony Hopkins said flat out that we didn't have the technology to do it, so you're a reconstruction. So I think we can put that theory to bed too. Don't know why I'm doing that on the non-theory part of the podcast. So there's something you guys cannot worry about being spoiled. Charlie F. I'll agree that let's see. Oh, so this is a unique defense of why the security forces are dumb by Charlie F. I will agree that Delos, especially the security forces, seem to be very dumb. But remember who came up with the original idea for Westworld? Michael Crichton. A hallmark of his writing has always been the failure of man when it comes to their technological creations. I mean, look at all the InGen employees at Jurassic Park franchise and how stupid they've been. At least with Westworld, it stayed open for 30 years and had 5 other parks built with it. I'm just thinking the stupidity of Delos isn't necessarily the failure of writing, but carrying on the tradition and trope of hubris and failure that was the hallmark of Crichton's best-known works.
I didn't think the people in the original Jurassic Park were stupid.
Well, that's the thing.
I thought they were all damn smart, and they were just a victim of circumstance.
Right, and like that was the pleasure of Jurassic Park, where they outlined just how well thought out this was. All the dinosaurs are female, and they're dependent.
I haven't
on
read the book, but
right, but that was
similar.
part of it. That all the dinosaurs were female, and so they couldn't breed, and they couldn't get even if they did get loose, they couldn't do anything with it, and they were all contained, and they had. But there was signs that there's, when you actually got a paleobotanist there, she's like, well, you're feeding these things something that's making an allergic reaction. And then it just all spun out of control with chaos theory.
Yeah.
This just feels like
and then
it's amazing that nothing has gone wrong in the park.
Well, I thought the enforcers in Jurassic Park were smart and good. Like, you got
Muldoon.
Sam Jackson's character, smart, good guy, right?
Smart, good guy.
You've got Muldoon, smart, good guy.
He was just out thought by a clever girl.
Yeah.
And
outnumbered.
I want that. I want that clever girl moment with Dolores.
Me too.
Not like the writers are on your side and that's why you're winning.
What about Sphere? I haven't seen Sphere.
Sphere.
Or read the book.
I've read the book. Seen it. That's the one with
Dustin Hoffman.
I didn't like.
And is it not Kim Basinger? Is it?
Maybe. I don't.
Stone.
Yeah.
Sharon.
Most
Stone?
Michael
Sharon
Crichton
Stone.
films get butchered into transition, or most Michael Crichton books get butchered into transition to like Andromeda Strain might be an exception. Jurassic Park's an exception.
Yeah.
But I've seen what was that Congo movie? God, what a steaming pile of shit. But the book's actually kind of compelling and spooky.
That's what they need. They just need a big laser gun in Westworld. That'd take out all the hosts right away.
They need a super intelligent ape running around. That's what we need. That's what we need.
Just introduce dinosaurs into Westworld. They'll take care of the hosts.
How do you know Jurassic World isn't one of the other 5 parks? Because honestly, that would be cool.
It would be cool.
I could not hate if we're running around Park 3 and it turns out it's just the I get,
be awesome.
I get down on that. Minaj P has a question for us. How do you guys balance watching a show like Westworld multiple times versus just once? Most casual viewers like me only watch Westworld once a week, and a show like this where watching it seems increasingly like a chore with all the timelines, theorizing, and honestly confusion. Are you finding that your views are changing drastically or not on that week's episode between Sunday night and Tuesday night?
The answer is we don't. we don't balance that very well, and there's really no way for us to.
And it seems uniquely a problem with the mystery box shows like
Yes.
this and you know, Mr. Robot. It's tough. It's tough because, you know, the show's not designed to fool every person that gives a shit on the internet. It's designed to fool 95% of the people. And it probably would if we just let it do that thing. But you can't, because that's the appetite of solving the mystery is there. And, you know, we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't engage in that. But I do feel like there is something to that. We are, like I said, we're running around with flashlights in a haunted house and then saying, oh, we weren't scared at all. Well, no shit. So, Grammy McGee, just wanted to correct my pronunciation of Coughlin is pronounced Coughlin.
Coughlin.
Doesn't really, you know, he's dead now. He's
R.I.P. Coughlin.
Deadlin. But yeah, Coughlin. But it's literally spelled Coughlin. But I mean,
yeah, they got all sorts of weird by American standard pronunciations over there.
Right.
Like I said, there's a brand of, I think it's beer that we would say Smithwick's, but it's actually pronounced Smittigs.
Well, and so like Banshee, if you've seen it like in the theme park ride, like that's spelled phonetically to make sense to our English ears, but Banshee, the actual Irish mythological figure, is spelled like Ban-Sehede is how I would pronounce it if I were to run across it like Coughlin, you know?
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like they jacked her alphabet and did something completely unique and whimsical with it. And I celebrate.
Does anybody in the show say it?
Someone has to.
Someone's got to. And if they say it Coughlin, then I'm going to keep calling him Coughlin.
But I mean, if they said it over radio, Coughlin and Coughlin sound so like I probably.
That's true.
And I'm watching with subtitles, so I would have just been like Coughlin, you know? It'd have been like what was that fucking Lenny and Laurel? Yanny and Laurel. I would have seen Lenny or I'd seen Coughlin and heard Coughlin. Mike from Townsend, Australia. I got many people bitching and moaning about security forces, but I felt like I would let someone with some professional expertise talk about it. My biggest concern primarily is with the lack of tech that the security forces utilize.
I've been saying that for
As
episodes.
an artillery officer in Australian Army, I know for a fact that on the market today are many systems of locating and targeting the enemy that go far beyond the light-up laser tag system. You know, the one the red lights would immediately give your position away? It also frustrates me to no end that they aren't using any form of night vision equipment in these darkened rooms. If I was going against killer robots, I would have every bit of technological edge I could give me that would give me a fighting chance. That was also a thing in the old Westworld series. The fact that the man in black who was a robot had like just killer aim and could see in the dark and had enhanced telescopic vision and all kinds of crazy shit.
Right.
Which I imagine... They never really addressed this, but can the host see in the dark if they wanted to?
My guess is no, but I don't really have anything to stand on.
Right. I mean, it could be that just like all these hosts have the ability to speak all different languages. Like maybe that's locked away under some kind of hidden firmware layer, but
yeah.
But yeah, you'd think that they have, and they do. I do think these robots are superhuman. Like Teddy beating the shit out of that guy was not that was not just peak human level of ass beating.
Yeah, that was both the precision and power of a machine.
Yeah, like that's like the way Captain America beat someone down.
Yeah,
and he's a super soldier. To turn to characters that make up this group of gutless wonders, the mind literally boggles at the complete lack of tactical aptitude these mercenaries possess. They're terrible to the point of distraction. Mercenaries are normally ex-special forces types who spend their time training for every eventuality. This fast and loose cowboy attitude of Mr. Mustache and his team is counter to the sort of people Dallas would employ to fix their problems. To get to the crux of my issue, I think Westworld writers miss an excellent opportunity to explore how artificial intelligence that can today beat grandmasters at chess would approach battling a technologically superior enemy. Why didn't they have their Ewoks versus the Empire moment in this episode? I'm not going to delve into any fan fiction or any further, merely to underline my displeasure with the distracting action scenes that could have had much better impact on the plot and character development. Yeah, if it bugs me, I can only imagine what it'd be to, but like, you know, it'd be like, you know, a surgeon watching ER. because like I can recognize the not good nature of this. Boy, you're a professional.
No, it's that gut feeling that you have when you watch something that you know is wrong.
And that's also the like, yeah, when I read that Ewok versus Empire, like, man, they really could have shown some really ingenious ways to defeat the humans that have all the trump cards in their hands, and they
could have shown the learning process, like
yeah,
the hosts do not have tactics built into their brains.
Maybe that's what Dolores could use a very large disposable army for. To like throw waves, and like they realize like, oh, these guys are ridiculously easy to beat, but they get smarter every time. They're learning. Oh my god. Like, throw some aliens into that palette.
You have your clever girl moment. Like, that's the thing that we were looking for, and they just don't want to give it to us.
So this leads up to the final point of the criticism, and this is the last non-speculative theorizing email. So if you don't want to hear us bitch and moan about the show, and you're not interested in listening to speculation feedback, you could presumably turn it off. But this is kind of gets to the crux of things. Craig P. What exactly does the show benefit from showing all the different timelines? The scene with Dolores and Hale is great, but since they have jacked up the timeline so much, we have no idea how important it is. I think Hale's already been shown after, and she's safe with both eyes. This was also a forum thread, which is essentially, why is Westworld... Why are they splitting everything into all these separate timelines? And that's a big criticism we had of recent seasons of The Walking Dead, like... Why all this flashing forward and backwards, and like it just seems like it's only services to obscure a plot that's not that interesting. I don't think that's what's going on in Westworld, but I thought it'd be interesting for us to discuss that.
It is there to obscure the plot, though. That is the number one reason. I don't think it's because it's not interesting, but it's because they want a very specific pattern of reveals here.
Yeah.
And it feels like they're kind of searching for the magic of season 1 in that regard.
Because
in season 2,
I agree. I think the plot is interesting, but I'm starting to wonder, like, why do we need to see Bernard Way? Like, it's like we're like, oh shit, I don't know what's going on, but like there would have been a lot of moments where we don't know what's going on if they just told the plot in a chronological order.
Yeah, I think so. Like you, I'm very interested in seeing a cut of this in chronological order,
because like you said, last year it was to preserve the reveal that the Man in Black and William are one and the same, and they're actually occupying 30 different years of history. I question the utility if that's something that you can do. Like, that's something you could do in an anthology format, because every single year is something slightly different that you could, like, use that same structure to tell this other jumbled tale. But in a story where it has continuity and the viewers are expecting, it seems like maybe in season 3 they should zig instead of zag. They should like do a straightforward story that doesn't have all this tricky stuff, because everyone's looking for it. Everyone's like, isn't it exhausting to try to figure, like, does it have to be a mystery box?
It is exhausting, and worse in my opinion.
But for Nolan and Joy too, because we're talking about how defensive they're being, and like the fact that they are now like setting up something they reveal the next episode, and is that like I do think the underlying story is fascinating.
Yes, and I think that's the problem, and the reason I get so fatigued with it is because I see underneath all of this this obscuring timeline stuff, a really compelling drama, a character-driven drama. And not only is the timeline stuff obscuring the mystery, but it's also obscuring the emotional impact of that drama. And I cannot get invested when I'm jumping around from timeline to timeline to timeline. And my brain is not focused where it should be on the emotion of the characters. It's focused on the mystery box. And that, to me, is the least interesting part of this show.
And it kind of reminds me of like going to a Japanese steakhouse, because I go like once or twice a year, and it's always fun. There's the guy making the onion volcano, and now he's doing a Japanese egg roll, and now he's trying to throw a cucumber in my mouth. Okay, this is great. This is fun. But if I went there, like, you can go to the restaurant and to have that experience, you can just go and eat the food.
That's true.
Like, you can go and sit down at a table and not have the guy try, and like they'll just serve you your food. And like if you went to that steakhouse like every other day, you'd probably quickly get bored of sitting there for an hour watching this guy prepare the food in a slightly entertaining way. Like, but the underlying food is
cucumbers coming at your face.
The underlying food is still delicious. So like maybe they need to find a way to just give us the damn food. Because like
yeah,
that's 20th time you saw the damn onion volcano. It's not as magical as the first time. Like it's just
I
an
agree.
onion.
And the unfortunate thing is the onion volcano has become the hallmark of Westworld.
But it's still the meat. It's the yum yum sauce, man. It's the
That's
fried
what
rice.
makes it good. I know.
I don't need. Like,
I know, but this fucking onion volcano is what they're known for.
the yum yum sauce tastes good regardless if I see the guy mix it together in some kind of Tom Cruise cocktail fashion. Like, just give me the damn yum yum sauce and my shrimp and my steak, and I'll be on my way, sir.
I'm with you.
It's perfectly fine to eat. I don't know. I guess we need to watch the next 3 episodes to see, because again,
they will bring it around. I know they'll bring it around.
The other thing is, we were getting into a lot of this stuff last year, and then by the end of the season, like, it fucking won the Baldies. Like, it was the best show that we saw on television that year. So double dumbass on us for doing it again.
No, that's why I say I know they will bring it around, but it's the journey. It's not all about the ending, and it seems like the only moment that they can really nail in this show emotionally is the ending.
Right, because it's like, I just don't think the show needs it to be that standout, because there's no other show that's dealing with like AI and like these philosophical questions at this kind of depth and seriousness. Like that.
People would probably argue humans, but I haven't seen that, so I don't really know.
That's true.
I've heard good things.
Yeah. I
don't
know.
But there
so
are
maybe,
a lot of
maybe
interesting, to your point.
Maybe they do need to make it a mystery box every year. But
there are a lot of interesting questions that are ripe for talking about, especially in our modern era.
Right.
We just, I think the mystery gets in the way.
I'm trying to think. I mean, like Mr. Robot season 3. I always go back to that analogy because they like completely course corrected and the show was really good. Like they didn't exactly dispense with the mystery box.
Not totally, but it was a more straight ahead character drama.
It was a much more straight ahead and was a return to form and brilliant. Maybe in season 3 we'll see a little bit more of a straightforward Westworld.
And I'm sure.
But the thing is like, I would worry. I'd worry that would like piss off the fans that are liking the mystery box.
I was gonna say, this is all from my perspective,
because if you made the people to just want the Japanese steakhouse go sit at the fucking volcano table, and made the people to want the volcano show go sit at the boring table, you'd have pissed off people.
Yeah,
and there's no way for them to give both people both experiences like the steakhouse.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
No, that was what I was gonna say. Is this is all from my POV. My personal preference. I know there are people out there who love the fucking mystery box, and I used to be one, you know.
And I think a show like Lost, I don't think if you love the mystery box, you need to stay the hell away from like you need to preserve the mystery. You need to not try to like be the one that's just jumping around the corners of the flashlight, like, aha, I caught you hiding behind the wall, you ghost. You know,
or maybe that's what you get off on. You know, just like if that's your enjoyment of it, then do it. But yeah, I don't know. You're right. They can't please both types of viewers.
I feel like those type of viewers, like, they want the thrill of the hunt, but they are disappointed if they actually, like, 3 episodes to go, figure everything out. But we'll see, because I thought we had everything figured out last year, and they had a couple of loops to throw us. So,
but I mean, our podcast very much follows the trajectory of the show, and I feel like in some ways our podcast has a sort of crisis of personality here. Like, what kind of show are we?
The volcano, or we just want the yum yum sauce, man?
Right, and I don't think we have figured that out yet. But I will say, we also almost have to be the volcano people, because if we're not, the show is not delivering the rest, the non-volcano yum yum sauce.
Like, because I can serve up both food, like as we do, like, you know, we have this theory and speculation that we save till later in the podcast with people, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people are turning off the podcast at that point. But we can't have both experiences.
Exactly. The research and
the
theories that
guy,
I know about,
like when he's making the food, he's still doing he's just, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's cooking the food the same way.
Analogy more and more tortured, but yes.
No, it's better. It gets better every single time, because from the Japanese cook, his perspective is the same, because there's not like a dude that's just back cooking. It's just like it's always like, you know, he just makes an extra couple plates of food that gets spirited off to the boring side of the restaurant, you know? So, like, we're the cook. We got to make the fucking volcano. We got to throw the cucumbers at your face, regardless of how we personally feel about it. And you're right. I don't know, because, like, in my experience with, like, shows like Lost and X-Files, I was certainly that person that had the, you know, X-ray specs and flashlight going through the haunted house. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But then again, both of those shows really disappointed me.
Well,
and I gave up on both of them before they were done.
The things that I like about Lost are, in retrospect, not as much about the mystery box and more about every single episode they'd give you a meaningful flashback about the characters' histories, and they'd tell a really great character drama story.
I agree.
And that's what I love about it. And I don't think this show has the depth of character, honestly, that something like Lost does.
It does seem like they have that's one, I guess, like I feel like he made it prematurely, but if I go back to like the Chris and Andy the reason they weren't excited about Westworld is that it doesn't seem like the characters have changed a lot since season 1. Maybe the Man in Black has my perception of his has changed a little bit now that when I know he's William and we've gone back in his past and we see his relationship with Steph. Like I've gotten some backs, but Dolores literally is the same person who blew Anthony Hopkins' brains out.
Yeah,
and has not made any further character developments. Maeve is still the person who chose to reject freedom and salvation to go back to her daughter, and that really hasn't changed. Like she's further appreciated the situation by seeing it play out by these other characters in Shogun World, but like and Teddy's changed, but not for the better. Like he's just been turned into a one-note supervillain.
Right. Stubbs, Elsie, all of them are
Bernard,
treading water.
Like they've all kind of like been in stasis except for the Man in Black. But maybe, I don't know, maybe it's his story after all. It's kind of weird that it's about all these robots if it's about the human. Okay, shall we get to the spoiler section?
Yeah, let's do
Not spoiler, the feedback theory section.
Yeah.
This is where we got the volcano onion for y'all. Choo choo.
Are you ready? Are you ready? I'm gonna throw this thing up into the air. You catch it in your mouth.
That's right. Kate, it took me by surprise how disappointed I was at the revelation that the Bernard Dolores scenes were in the past. Our past, Bernard's ever present, I guess.
Really? Yeah, a lot. That was my initial feeling about this, and a lot of people were, going deep on that.
I think I was hoping for a kind of future nature plus nurture host upbringing that moved beyond the scripted loops. I just want to point out that we might not be past the cradle stuff because we have eliminated the cradle where the hosts are backed up. But more and more, maybe we shouldn't talk about this theory of what the Valley Beyond is. If the Valley Beyond is a backup of all the guest data, then it probably looks and acts a lot like the cradle over on the Westworld side of things. So like,
yeah, but then why would they run humans through the cradle? Why wouldn't they run humans through the Valley Beyond's
to verify the fidelity? They can keep doing that because they never degrade, and they can continue to run their responses and test it and continue to perfect it. And like, why wouldn't they?
I guess I don't understand what the purpose of 2 cradles is.
Well, one is cradle for the host, and the other is a cradle.
But Ford says the cradle is for the humans, the fidelity test for the humans.
Well, I'm just saying, like, where do you think?
Because Bernard is physically in the mesa, in the cradle at that point.
So you think, I guess my thought was that all like this data that Peter Abernathy has in his head is a backup. The source data has got to be in the Valley Beyond, that thing that William built, his greatest mistake. And it just makes sense to me that there'd be a similar forest of marbles. Maybe they're not dormant, maybe they're not currently running simulations, but what I'm saying is I guess that it might not be the cradle, but the same kind of simulation technology, I think, is going to be on the other side of the Valley Beyond. And I think we might be fooling ourselves if we think that we're done with the simulation world. I didn't want to mention that in the main podcast because obviously, but I will say it doesn't matter. I'm just saying, like, if I see the weird widescreen aspect ratio, I'll be like, ha, I was on to you, because you're right. Like, some of that stuff, like the know that Bernard and Dolores are like interacting in the future, and like there's something menacing in the Dolores interacting with Bernard, and like, oh, you're almost a man, like in a way that seemed weird if she was just helping Ford with this project of bringing Arnold back, but like makes sense if she was like, you know, they're like he's the one that's standing in the way of her getting the key decrypted, and she's trying to, like, I don't know. I feel like there's still room for that cradle technology, if not the cradle itself, to come back.
Okay.
So yeah. So one of the coolest theories that I saw this week, something we kind of joked about, the Man in Black being a host. You still think that's a lock?
No, I was joking when I
Okay.
said Man in Black is a host confirmed.
But like we did excuse a lot of stuff about the Man in Black having that busted arm that got instantly healed because of medical technology. What if William was captured and replaced by a simulation of like a simulated host version of William? And what the Man in Black is going to find, it's going to blow his mind, is he is going to open the door and find the actual William there, still with his busted arm, pleading for his life. And like, what would that realization make him think about the hosts? Like that he was a host and he didn't even know it. I think that's like to me that's what lays beyond the door for William. It's a trap. It's a trap for him. This powerful Delos guy who could maybe protect the host if he can only be convinced that they are every bit as real and vibrant and human as the rest. And the way you do that is to just hijack him, send him on this mission, and the thing he finds at the center of his maze is himself.
So the narrative hook here is it moves him from a place of destruction
and
to a
contempt.
place of aid.
Yeah, like
as regards the host.
It's I don't know. It kind of makes him a weird Christ figure in that he does all this suffering to understand and redeem the hosts that he despised.
Well, you love that Christ stuff.
Hey man, it's buried deep in the bones.
Sure is.
But no,
I'm not off the idea that he's a host.
Right.
I still think that's very much up in the air.
What do you? Because I think you and I are on the same page about what's going to happen at the Valley Beyond.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's just talk. What you walk me through it, and I'll tell you where I think you're right or wrong.
So I think Dolores is taking this decryption key.
Okay.
And I think we differ here a little bit on what's in Abernathy's head. I think it's just a key to decrypt the data, which is the human backups that are in the Valley Beyond. And that she needs to join these two things up, and that's what Ford is trying to do here.
But it's a lot of data if it's just an encryption key.
Well, he says it's an immense encryption key, right? Like I don't know. I forget the exact line that Bernard says, but
right.
I think it's the decryption key that they need to unlock the data that is in the Valley Beyond. And I think regardless, whether it's the data or whatever, the Valley Beyond probably contains host bodies.
Guest bodies.
Well, host bodies of recreated guests who have visited the park before, and their consciousness is going to be it's clear that she needs this key, right? So if she needs the key, it means she can't just destroy the human host or the human simulation data. She needs to unlock that data. And so that to me says she's going to try and pair her host brains, like her and Teddy and everybody she can, with similar to the way Bernard and Ford are paired right now, with the human simulation, so that they can act like humans and get out of the park.
Like they can Trojan horse their way out.
Right.
I'm in agreement of that. I think it's going to be. I mean, the shared consciousness has got to be important somehow.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see if Bernard finds a way to destroy that, because what the other variation of that is Dolores just does a brain swap. She puts them into the human bodies. There's a reason that the hosts found all these drowned hosts with virginal brains, is because they had marbles that they were intended to be encoded with this host data, this guest data, never were. They throw them in there, they take their brains, put them in completely different bodies, and then they either sneak out or are released because Delos is ready to do their master plan, which is maybe replacing some of the world's richest and most powerful people with hosts that they can control. And then they will go out in the real world now in key positions of power and authority, and that will be the rest of the show. Now, it's inescapable that if they go that route, they're going to recast almost all of the hosts. Like Dolores will no longer be...
Well, here's the key, though. I think Ford says in this episode that the project never worked. The project never worked. They would always degrade. They would always get ruined,
but
right?
But would a host degrade?
So, well, here's what I'm thinking is
they already walk
they
around
can use that for 30-something days, as far as we know, right? To get out of the park, and then somehow
if they show that Bernard,
get into a simulation outside of the park.
So that's Bernard's door. Like Ford put himself in there just so Bernard would figure out a way to destroy his copy and then take his body back for once and for all, to me, that would tell us that that's his whole purpose, is he's going to teach the other host how to liberate themselves from this situation. If they go down, because I still think it's possible that they'll just load Dolores. Although, yeah, they couldn't pass for that person then. So they have to, right? The whole reason they have this Ford and Bernard riding shotgun with each other is to show us that that's possible, and then Bernard going through the door will be him kicking Ford out, which will kill Ford forever.
And we can see that there's clearly a dominant consciousness within Bernard, right? Like Bernard is unable to exercise free will when Ford is inside him. I wonder which of those personalities would win if you put Dolores into some random human's body.
Right.
Would she be able to override Martha Stewart's programming?
97-year-old Martha Stewart who just loves Westworld.
Here's something that I don't think they're going to do, but I think would be really cool conceptually, is the idea of this bicameral mind, which we've got with like Bernard and Ford right now, or Arnold and Ford, let's say, together in one body. It kind of makes up a bicameral mind, which could be the next stage of evolution, could be the key to unlock the next stage of evolution for both humanity and the host.
So it's a way forward together.
Exactly, yeah, and it changes what both of them are.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that wouldn't play into it later, like if they need to load their consciousness into these human simulation host bodies, maybe the coming together is some kind of mutual evolution. I don't think they're going to go that way, but it was an interesting concept to me.
Have you seen, this is another theory that I really like, that Charlotte Hale is actually Arnold's son?
No. No.
So here's the argument. Arnold thinks he has a son named Charlie who died, and then he's estranged from his wife. And that's Bernard's cornerstone, which keeps Bernard like essentially a workaholic at Westworld, because like he's out on the outs. His son's dead. He's on the outs with his wife. He has a couple of, tense conversations with her. That's his loop.
And
right?
here, I'll say that in this episode, they do a flashback to Bernard seeing his wife, and it's mixed with Ford's face.
Which I think they did that in season 1 too. And also they out of nowhere brought like the picture of Charlie. Like Bernard is clutching a picture of Charlie when Hale is talking to him. So the line of evidence that like the way this goes is that Arnold's daughter didn't really die, that him and his wife had an estrangement probably over him fixating on his new daughter and the new park
or asking them to move into the park with him
and wanting to, and to the extent that he's going to kill himself to save these. And Bernard, and when Ford created Bernard, he just essentially kept that cornerstone but made it that his son died. So here's the evidence is, Charlotte Hale and Bernard are both black. So there's that. And then also Charlotte and Charlie sounds like Charlie's a perfectly fine nickname for a girl who's named Charlotte.
We're rapidly approaching anagram territory.
Well, they fucking did it before. With Bernard was literally an anagram of whatever.
Bernard Lowe.
Is Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, Worcestershire.
Schwarzenegger is his name. Then the other thing is like Charlotte Hale is about the age of Charlie. Should she have grown up? It also explained, because we said this, like why is this very young woman this big swinging dick executive at this company? Well, if she's the daughter of the co-founder of the company, that would explain why she got a leg up.
But it makes it real hard to believe that they've scrubbed all information about Arnold if his fucking daughter is one of the...
I thought that I definitely saw some wry amusement when they pick up Bernard at the beach. And to the extent that that's one of the reasons they're putting Bernard through this loop, right? They're putting Bernard through all these paces to try to get this key out of him, and they're like being all wry about like, oh, this is the first time this happened. But I do think that there's several times where you can see Charlotte Hale being kind of like knowing and acting like she thinks Bernard is an android before she actually finds the bodies. And even when she finds the bodies, it's not like a shocking thing. It's more like a wry, like, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
maybe she does know that that's her dad, but not her dad. You know, like why would you keep that information from him when obviously she would and Bernard would cross paths? So maybe she like has been in the know this whole time. Maybe she's the only one that's in the know. This theory, like honestly, it starts to get off in the weeds, but there's another. I want to put another theory together with. This is something, as far as I know, it's my mind that's come up with the fact that Maeve and her daughter's cornerstone is the same as Arnold and Bernard's cornerstone, and that Maeve is somehow a recreation of Arnold's wife. That Ford had like a long-term plan to maybe like in the same way he recreated his family was recreating their family. And this also strengthens the whole Adam and Eve that the Ma Eve thing that I was really hot on the first 2 episodes, that like there is something special about these people walking hand in hand out of this thing. Like they're a new Adam and Eve.
I'll throw some gas on that fire. I think when Ford describes his family, his robot family, he says there were some embellishments.
Yeah.
So maybe some embellishments in Bernard.
I don't know why Ford would throw his ex-wife or his fake wife into the park to be used as a like that's the thing that like I can't quite square it.
I mean, all of this,
but it's interesting because like
very dubious.
Because then Maeve had a real daughter at one point that was Charlotte, and Bernard had a real daughter that's still alive that's Charlotte, and Maeve is deluded into thinking that it's this robot thing that she has no connection to, but explains the real maternal connection she has to it. And Bernard's got this attachment to Charlie, who thinks is dead. Like it's not quite there, but we're also 3 episodes from the end, so I wouldn't expect it to be quite there. But I'm starting to see like I'm. And the thing is like this Charlie thing crossed my desk like 3 weeks ago, and I'm like, no fucking way, get out of here. Like I even think I said like, you can't, at some point you can't just be like, hey, these people are black, they must be really like,
right.
I don't know.
No, I mean, I'm not buying this, but
you're not.
But
Charlie?
Nah. I mean,
she's so young. How can she be
she almost seems too young to be Charlie. If we know that Bernard died like 30 years ago.
Well,
and
but
Charlie was like 10.
All we know is Bernard's fictitious backstory. We've never seen like Arnold's actual, like we don't know how old Charlie was. Like Charlie could have been a baby.
Oh, well,
that's what I'm saying. Like that.
Yeah, I'm still not buying it.
Right. So I don't know. There's that.
I've got a question that is like a perennial question.
Because here's the other thing that kind of ties it together. Why is Ecorches obsessed with Maeve and her daughter? Like, it seems like the Ghost Nation is all about humans, but if you start to say that, like, the human host hybrids or the guest host hybrids could also be recognized as human, it would explain why they captured her daughter, because maybe she's like a simulated version of Charlotte, and they also said that our paths lay on the same line. Like that there's some kind of connection. And next week promises to be all about the Ghost Nation. It looks, did you see the trailer for it? It looks fucking rad. Yeah. Like I'm excited about them because one of the mythos of the season 1 is they had this whole plot line about the Native Americans that got cut because an actor died, and like them being able to bring that back would be super cool.
Can we talk about one thing that I always talk about, but is still up in the air and a confusing point for me? When Bernard wakes up on the beach, and he repeats the line, or he says in sync the line that Strand is going to deliver, making it obvious that he has some foreknowledge of the scenario that's playing out.
Right.
And that's as precise as I can be with that language.
Yeah. And it's not a simulation because we didn't have the aspect ratio.
The aspect ratio, right.
So my first thought was, well...
And now we know that Ford may be within Bernard in that scene, potentially.
Is Strand a host?
I start to wonder if there was some cradle work before the cradle work we've seen so far. Because Bernard goes to the cradle place, right, and retrieves Ford's brain marble. Could he also have been in the cradle, maybe running sims on what is likely to happen
Well,
in the event of Dolores's rebellion.
That's where I was getting at, the whole simulation that he is.
So he is pre-gamed for this.
Yeah.
He has done his research in a simulator.
That's why he knew what Dolores would do, because he simulated this exact situation in the cradle God knows how many times.
Right. And that would explain why Bernard can say that line, because he's experienced it but not experienced it.
See, this goes back to the Asimov's Foundation and Empire thing, where you can run this like mass simulation of all humanity based on a sample size and ridiculously accurately predict the future.
No, it's like Doctor Strange in the latest Avengers movie, recognizing the path.
Right. There's 14 million ways this could play out, and
right.
we only win
and
one of them.
So Bernard is recognizing the path that he's on here. Maybe?
I like that. I like that. That is one way to square that without the humans,
without them being in a simulation and the fakery of the aspect ratio.
Yeah. The fact that this is just Ford playing out. Yeah. How would they tell? I guess they'd have to have a flashback to tell us how.
Yeah.
That's this, because like that's a very hard. I mean,
they can do flashbacks.
Ford could just do 5 minutes of like, very dense exposition, and it'd probably work because he's Anthony Hopkins and he can get away with that shit.
Yeah.
But like, I'm trying to think, how would they actually tell that story?
I mean, just they do flashbacks all the time.
They do, but there's like a certain method to their madness. Like they don't flash to just arbitrary time periods.
No, they need to have something significant in the present happening to
that ties it. Like maybe Bernard was looking for Ford one day and he wasn't in his office, and you find out that's because he was running simulations of
so many of these flashbacks have happened when he's entered the location where that took place. If there is a second cradle, like you're talking about, over simulating humans or whatever in the Valley Beyond, maybe he walks in there. And these flashbacks start coming up.
It is a little. I've noticed that it's a little bit. I think it was. I saw that you got kind of tripped up in the timeline. I saw several other people.
No. I was not tripped up on the timeline of the episode. I was tripped up on the question, because I thought what you were saying was we in this episode didn't see the latest timeline, and I was like,
right,
that's clearly not true.
Okay.
Yeah,
but I did see in feedback,
and then you stated it, and I was like, well, I'm not 100% certain on my timeline.
Well,
so
shit,
maybe
we got blamed for something neither of us did.
God damn it.
But I did see a lot of people that confusion start, and I think as the timelines start to converge and like they're dressed the same, and like it is getting a little bit harder. It used to be really easy to tell, like, well, Bernard's leaking brain fluid and he's got it. Like it was a lot easier to figure out.
I think the glasses are the totem here.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that's how it goes.
Okay, shall we get to the feedback?
Yeah.
Stephen R. Wanted to write in the short theory. I think the showrunners are hiding the big reveal out in the open. Ford tells William that his game is to find the door. It seems like Teddy Flood is the door, since his name is Theodore. There's an obvious... Okay.
Hold Theodore.
That was my first reaction, but check it out. There's an obvious phonetic door in his name, but at the front is Theo, which is a prefix often linked with gods.
Oh,
with
boy.
William in search of the biblical glory location and the door, it seems like Teddy fits perfectly. To flesh this out a bit more, we see Teddy's character taking on more of a leadership, violent role, taking matters in his own hands with the security guy. His last name is Flood, so he's likely the catalyst or connected to the flood that drowns all the robots. Bringing back to the Man in Black, there's convincing evidence that he may be a robot too. So would his game end with Teddy's flood destroying both of them? Is Teddy the god of the door? Is this going to be like the final thing that William has to beat to get to the human copy of himself in the middle? I don't know.
Well, you can't know God's door without knowing the devil's door.
That's right.
That's all I'm saying.
The devil's door is the back door.
And Teddy knows the devil's door.
He knows the devil's door.
Oh, yeah.
Logan and him got acquainted with it. I would dismiss this, but his last name's fucking Flood, and we saw him drowned.
Uh-huh. They're not afraid to go literal with this,
and we're looking for the door, and he is Theodore, and the Theo, like they do this Harry Potter amalgam bullshit.
That's fair. I'm on the Charlie is Charlotte.
Honestly, I'm not even call it bullshit, because it's like there's ways to do it that's clever and fun, and there's ways to do it that are kind of stupid. It's just yet another rhetorical device you can use to tell a story. I like it.
Right.
I don't know what it means. I don't know what being the god of the door would actually mean. There does seem to be like some kind of like moral high ground shifting from Dolores to Teddy.
Here's what I think.
Like Teddy is essentially Dolores's host. Like he will do all manner of unspeakable things at her command and for her pleasure, not that he himself would do.
So this ties into the theory I have about what's going to happen in the Valley Beyond.
Hit me.
I think so it's very easy to say, oh, flood, and he dies in a flood. He's very important. I don't think Teddy is important. I think Teddy has been cast as a secondary character
Poor Teddy.
who is there only to do the bidding of Dolores, and Dolores is the important one. Unfortunately, Dolores is so important that they can't show you Dolores' body in that sea of drowned hosts. I think that would give up too much of the game. And so
Why? If the game is that they're going to swap bodies.
Because Dolores is a main character that literally can't die. Like, there's no way Dolores is going to die.
But there's so many ways she could die without dying that like...
That's what I mean, though.
But throwing Dolores' face up would have been even more of a what the fuck.
That's exactly what I mean, though, because if you show Dolores' body in there, then we know that Dolores has escaped some other way, right? Whereas everyone believe that Flood is dead.
Sure.
I think what's happening here is they could only show you the bodies that they could show you without giving away the mystery.
Right.
And so Teddy is not that important of a character. He's just the one they could show you to go, ooh.
Yeah.
What the
He's
fuck?
important-ish.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Important enough, but not too important.
Right. But the Theodore thing implies that he is maybe more important than we realize.
I don't think he is.
Well,
I think he's there for her bidding because he's already been
Because here's
changed.
the other thing: the show, I assume that everything the show directly tells us is important. Okay.
Yeah.
The technician said, "I can't guarantee that this guy will hold together with me fucking with his brain." Okay. And I'm starting to think, because like at first I thought that was bad because like we saw Rebus, you know, like they jacked him all up and he was fine. But we also know a human can survive 30-ish days without defragging with the current technology.
And Rebus died.
So, like, I don't think the technician meant that, like, literally Teddy would just fly apart during the procedure, but maybe, like, his mind would reject it eventually, like this kind of violent change. And it would be kind of a bittersweet victory if Dolores wins and her and Teddy are in their new bodies or whatever, and then he suffers a catastrophic failure and he can't be recovered from backup for the actions that she did. Like turning him into the man that's strong enough to get to the Valley Beyond destroys his possibility of actually getting through the Valley Beyond. Like
that would be
I like that. I like
poetically delicious. Yeah.
Right.
Especially with Maeve telling her the whole way,
right,
look what you've done to that guy.
I'm sad because I you know, like I think James Martin he's an interesting guy because like in many simulations of Planet Earth, he would be like as big as Chris Pine. He's super handsome. I think he's a good actor.
I think he's getting there.
Like, but I'm saying like like why do some talented actors get heads on don't? And I was like really excited to see him have this big kind of meaty role. So I'm not excited to see him like getting written out of the show, but it would be dramatically. And I like the character of Teddy too. I think he's cool. It would be interesting to see that. But yeah, the other thing is, I guess now that I'm talking it through, they could keep the original cast and do like what they're doing with Ford. Like this is them teaching us what the next season's going to look like when these robots are sharing the skulls with these human consciousness. Like the bodies will not be Evan Rachel Wood anymore, but she'll be showing up in reflections and she'll be like she'll like almost like this person's going mad. Yeah. That would be kind of interesting. That's a way to keep her around, but also, man, recasting these characters, you're gonna have to really hit some home runs because they have to be every bit as good as the original and also capable of playing this really weird situation and not probably outshine the original.
Prosthetics. You just heavily make them up to not look like themselves.
Right.
It does raise the question that seems like a permanent state. Once they get into the human host and get out of the park where as far as we know, the only place the technology to remove them and swap them exists. Right. They're stuck in those bodies, I think.
I think that's the easiest thing. Like, like if they want to do a season 4 reveal that Dolores is back in her original body, like it doesn't bother me that it would be easy to retrofit that technology from the ruin of Westworld and the park itself. Like I feel like that's not too hard.
They do have to lay some tracks though.
I do.
Like, I can't believe that.
But we're already talking about season 4, so like, but no, I don't know. Now the thing is, I guess my question is, figuring the Great Valley Beyond is kind of roughly analogous to realizing that William and Man in Black are the same. But then there was the twist of Ford, you know, kicking this thing off. I wonder what is. So this is the secret that we figured out. That seems like it's going to be pretty much some kind of shape that the finale is going to turn into. What is the thing we're missing? Maybe
the unknown unknown.
Yeah, that's
I
the
don't
thing
know.
is that how is this a question I also want to see, like, one of my criteria of whether it's satisfying or not is whether you can go back and say, is this a question no one's ever asked? That's a pretty tall order.
Huge.
I don't know. Meeting yourself as a robot that you don't even know you're a robot. Maybe that's a question no one's asked before, but it's also not the same question William had in mind.
Yeah, I guess I've never asked, is there a human version of me out there that I am a copy of?
You know what?
I've never asked that question.
That would satisfy me if, like, the idea that you can copy a human without copying him, just by observing, by using this, like, this new technology in an inventive way, and, like, running it like a real life simulation, that you could backwards copy a person to be good enough to, like, commit fraud on an unprecedented scale. And it also like fits in with William's dark persona that he comes out from Westworld. Like, I'm gonna win and dominate at any cost. Like, good guy rules bad. That's a morally reprehensible thing they're doing. But I can see William doing it because he just don't give a fuck. Let's see. So we got one last email and then we're done. In this episode, Caitlin T. Sorry. In this episode, while in the simulation, Ford tells Bernard they need to open the door, but this isn't what young Ford told William, the Man in Black, in the beginning of the season, that the door is a game for him, unlike the maze. This seems to be evidence for something tricky, like the Man in Black we see in Season 2 is a host, and he doesn't realize it. That's also explained why his inhuman tolerance to gunshot wounds. I don't like the theory. I don't know how much more surprise human host I want. What do you guys think this means? I think I included this just to make sure I remember to talk about the Man in Black as a host theory.
Yeah.
Because it does, without any hand-waving, explain why he got his arm out of the sling, why he can survive multiple seemingly fatal gunshot wounds, why he's so good at combat against superhumanly strong robots. Like, if he's and not for nothing, it brings it back to the original Westworld where the Man in Black is a fucking robot.
Yeah, I mean, the more we discuss it, I think the more I'm warming to that idea.
Yeah.
I'm still not, like, seeing the definitive evidence yet, but, like,
it's circumstantial.
Thematically, it makes some sense.
Yeah.
It kind of could tie into other theories that are supported by evidence, like those kinds of things.
And that's the episode. We'll be back next Sunday for another Instant Talk episode. Of course, the first half is free for everybody, but if you want to listen and participate to the second half, you have to be a club member. So check that out, club.baldmove.com. We'll be back Sunday night for the penultimate episode.
Yeah. The bronze medalist at the finale contest
episode. Yeah, the bronze finalist episode. And until then, I'm Aaron.
I'm Jim.
I'll see you.